Welcome to Facehammer episode 86. It's me, Russ the Face, and as you can see if you're on YouTube, I'm joined by Les Martin and Byron Ord.
How's
it going, guys?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm really good.
It's really inappropriate that I have a 40k model, obviously, here.
Just
exchange it.
You don't have to hide your shade, Byron. It's fine.
Yeah.
Suddenly, now we've started recording. It's like I'm going to tidy up my background. Like, not like wait till
this is really
live.
Also, this is really good for Russ to edit if the video doesn't work again.
Yeah,
so yes. Yeah.
It's got to work, or I'll get the hose. That's what I've been told. It puts the video on YouTube unless Russ gets the hose again.
I can show way more 40k shame behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Put some soap in a sock and beat you with it, mate. That'll be good.
I put my 40k shame in the other room. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're all excited for 40k. Byron for painting, me and Russ for hobbying.
Yeah, and obviously we had an exciting weekend of pre-orders that went up. This is why we don't have video.
Yeah, you'll hear no complaining about Indomitus in this chat.
No,
yeah, I've had a really straightforward couple of weeks. I love my life.
Believed everything as well. So what have you, just before we get into, we're going to talk about the Generals Handbook today, but before we get into that, have you guys been up to anything fun, hobby, that sort of stuff?
Want to go first, Byron?
Which, for those not on YouTube, is.
Okay, so I played a game with a Bone Splitters list, but I guess we'll probably get to that at some point later. I've not painted anything.
But you've done
the Devilfish.
You've been doing some videos for AO, haven't you, and stuff? And
yeah, a lot actually.
Stuff, and you've just
so this is.
It looks awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, he's done. I've somehow got to involve green in it because I said I would. Like actual green. Yeah, actual proper like verdant jade green. I have no idea how I'm going to make that work, but yeah, I've done that.
Has it got lights? Can you do it at lights?
I could do, I guess. Yes, I've been doing some of that. I've been like 3 times a week minimum recording me painting stuff. And it's been new stuff, so I've learned quite a lot through the process of it, like absolutely tons. My latest discovery is that if you mix a ink with a base paint, you get 1 coat coverage from a brush, not an airbrush, over black, just whatever you want pretty much. So for example, if you've got Xeris purple and you're trying to get it to cover over black, if rather than adding a bit of water in there, you add a couple of drops of ink, it makes it more potent, which is good for various other things, makes it more liquidy, which is only a plus, and it means that it just the coverage is perfect anywhere, however thin or thick it is. So I keep finding little incidental things like that I'm actually quite excited about, and haven't applied to any of my own stuff whatsoever.
Have you used any of those acrylic Dalen Rowney acrylic inks?
No, the ones, are they the droppy ones?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, everyone seems to be using them.
I did. I watched a video by Vince Venturillo on his Imperial Fist Captain, which I've been doing a Tor Garadon with that I started, and using like the white ink to xenophil the yellow, and then do a filter of the yellow ink over the top of it. It really does
interesting.
Pop. I would recommend anyone with an airbrush to get a couple of those and try them out because they are awesome.
I think they're the ones that Marco Frazzoni on YouTube, not just Mech, has been using.
He uses Liquitex as well.
That's it, yeah.
So,
yeah. Andy Wardle's been using, I think in their Court of Brush or Court of Paint, YouTube videos. Yeah, he's been doing the adding ink to the colours and stuff, which was really good on his Sister of Battle sort of like YouTube guide. So I really enjoyed that. So again, that's something that I need to look into.
Yeah, I've been using Intensity from Scale 75, which has worked. I've only done it once, but honestly, it's one of those things that you do, and when you've undercoated something pretty sizable in like 4 minutes perfectly by brush, at that point you're in the realms of being faster than an airbrush because you didn't have to set it up. You just put shit in your Dippy Well palette and then rocked on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's a really good. That's really good to sort of like a skill to know. Or maybe I should pick up some Intensity. I've never really. I've sort of like
so good.
Sort of like gone away from using the non-GW paints recently. I've just like for the last like year or so, I've just been using all GW and like mixes of those as opposed to the scale. I went down the scale route when you first got my element, and then kind of just moved back into using the GW. I find that I'm using loads of contrast paints now, not for the, like, obviously I'm not using it for the advertised reason. Like I'll be using it as a wash or using it as part, like a 50-50 mix with that. And
dropping it into other stuff is great. Yeah, really, really good.
Recess shading stuff, like a glaze, like watering it down because it's quite intense color-wise. So I did a lot of the cloth on the Luminary, the Dark Angels, if people saw those online. It's just a case of like you spray it Wraithbone and then you get Skeleton Horde or Snakebite and then just dilute it like a glaze and just like build it up over 2-3 layers, and then you've got like a really smooth transition into the shade in the recess of the cloak.
Yeah,
kind of like what Terry does. Terry does it with Scrag Brown. I do it with Snakebite, the contrast paint. So
yeah.
Quite interesting. About you guys, any hobby?
I've been experimenting with green stuff rollers, and not using green stuff, but using Super Sculpey and baking. So
it looks awesome.
Yeah, it took me a while to get the technique down, but now I'm pretty happy with the method, using baking clay. I mean, the clay isn't cheap because it's like the high quality stuff I've used, and using like the best lubricant in the world for it, which is flour, actually, just normal baking flour. And I got myself a pasta machine to roller the clay into a consistent sheet. And then you can roll the roller on that after you've basically rubbed it with flour, and then use a disc cutter to cut them out, pop them on the baking tray, put it back through the roller, rinse, repeat. So I've done a whole army's worth of bases for an AOS project, which I'll keep to myself.
Exciting.
Then I've also done a Necron army's bases, and I was using the rollers from Green Stuff World, which you now stock at Element, don't you? So
we do.
Got those. So so you can pop over, and I'll put a link on the website to go to the page so you can order them from there. But clay,
I'll try and get a link in the video as well, like if we can here somewhere to be able to click through.
Clay I used, and you get this kind of effect.
The finish is awesome. It's so consistent. It's unbelievable.
To get that thickness by using.
Also, you say it's expensive, but it's like resin bases are way more expensive.
Compared to green stuff, it's not. It's just if you look at modelling clays, it's probably the most expensive clay you could buy.
Yeah, because you're not buying it by the kilo.
Like, you can buy this stuff, which is air drying, which is really cheap. It's like £2.
Yep.
£2.70. But it's horrible.
For those that aren't watching, Russ. Yeah, for those that aren't watching, what is it? Is it DAS clay? I can't see the name of it.
DAS modelling
clay, and then and it's Super Sculpey.
Medium blend is the stuff that I use for.
We'll get Russ will tweet a picture of it like at the end so you can see. So like if you want to like have a reference point in case you don't watch the video or the video doesn't go live, then
you can see Russ's finished bases, but not his models because they're.
No, exactly. But I've got like a stack of toppers for my Necrons, so you can see there's a stack of toppers I've got ready to go when my Indomitus turns up. Sorry guys, I got pre-order.
Yeah, and it doubles up, mate. You can make like mini pizzas now as well because you've got all like pasta things, can't you? Like
don't eat it. Like, disclaimer: do not eat Super Sculpey or DAS.
Super Sculpey,
but
and don't make your bases out of pizza dough.
Because that would be rubbish.
Pizza, then as a base, it's entirely appropriate. But one thing I will say about the DAS modelling clay, I picked up because I watched one of Marco's videos. So Marco's got a video on using it, and it's quite messy, but he mixes it with PVA because the DAS modelling clay is quite brittle. But if you mix it with PVA, it gains some elasticity, and you can you use it. But it does look like a pig to work with. I think it's better for stuff like scenery rather than for bases of models.
That's interesting because
perfectionist, so I want mine to look very neat, so I didn't want to use it for that.
Well, it's worked.
Yeah, well, took some time. It's
definitely
some experimentation. So
between you and Terry doing sort of like Terry did those mechanical bases, didn't you? And then you've done those with Super Sculpey. I think it's something that I'm probably going to look into at some point.
Yeah, it's a super good way to do something cool. Like it's going to look really distinctive when you've got it on the table. It'll look amazing.
Because I had a
rather than
massive
using
headache.
paving and carving it. Like
well, when I did my Caradron, I used the factory roller and I used milliput and green stuff mix, and I had a massive headache trying to get it flat, and I ended up doing flat sheets, and then I would, when it was dry, I would stick the bases to it and almost treat it like wheels paving and like clip round it and sand it, but it is such a pain. So this is so much easier because you don't need to sand it, you don't need to do. So I basically made an army's worth of base in 45 minutes, including the baking time.
That's really good,
and
dude.
all you do is super glue into the base. And because Green Stuff World cutters, you get the two sizes. You'll get like 38mm and a 40mm, and the 38mm is just the size for the beveled edge topper of the base, and the 40mm is the bottom of the base. So if you use MDF bases, you could use the 40mm, but if you use GW bases, you could use 38mm, and it doesn't look out of the ordinary.
Yeah, so, and I suppose you can always not use the cutter if you've got bigger bases, and then sort of like break it once it's done, and then do like sand so it looks like,
it's just pure laziness. You can make your own out of a Coke can. So all you'd have to do is take a Coke can, cut it down, cut the top and bottom off, cut the Coke down the side and lay it flat, or a beer can if you're into that. Then your Fosters if you want a bigger one. Or your Monster Relentless if you're Dan. Then you do that, and then you basically you could roll it to the size you wanted, and just somehow seal it, either like stick it together or staple it or whatever, stick it with sellotape. And then you've got a cutter that's custom to the size you want it to be, even the shape, like if you really wanted to. But actually, I found after you've done this stuff and it's baked, you can cut it with a knife and you can clean it up like Green Stuff, so you don't need to worry too much if it's a little bit irregular.
What if you have ovals? Is that more difficult?
What, you mean like this one?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Because they do oval cutters as well.
Sweet.
No, if you've got big ovals, like night bases, probably a bit tricky. But I would probably suggest you doing that with some other stuff on the base to break it up. So you do it in sections. But you could literally roll a sheet of it, put the big base on it, and just cut round it.
Yep.
If you really wanted to.
Turn the base upside down. So you've got the top of the base with the chamfered edge, draw around it, and then,
Well, I mean, you could do it the other way and then just trim it after it's baked. But I think you've got to just play around with it and see what works for you. Like I've got to do a base for one of the models, which I don't have a cutter for. So I have to work out a way of doing it. But I'm probably going to use the oval cutter twice because it will fit in this oval. So if you imagine you do that, and then you turn it that way, then do that, you can end up with a circle.
Got you. Yeah.
So, people are going to be guessing now. What's he doing?
Amazing. Well, we can come to it in the next episode.
Maybe we'll see. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing around with a little bit, and so I've been doing a bit of hobby. I've been building Necrons as well, which isn't really AOS, but I think because of the whole COVID thing, and because a lot of my gaming comes at events, my motivation to paint armies and do lists is for playing at events, and because there are no events, I'm like, I've got loads of hobby to do, but I'm just doing it as and when I feel like it. You're
not locked into
No, so I can. I mean, I've got an Iron Jaws project that I started that I want to finish off as well. So I'm just sort of slow burning and chopping around between these two projects, and I've got some other stuff on the cards, and so it's just get on with stuff as it arrives. And I do want to revisit my Nurgle as well, but that's another story. So we probably should get into the main show then, unless you guys want to talk about anything else.
What are we talking about?
I don't matter.
You don't matter. Did you not?
No, I don't matter. It doesn't matter.
No,
I've not really done much, to be honest. Anyway, I've had a lot going on in my personal life, so it's been mostly I've been focusing a lot on that. I've managed to get another 5 of my Lumen F about 80% done, and I've been working on some for Brian Carmichael as well. So like I've been doing, so I've done 10 of Brian's Wardens that he's getting me to do. So I've been doing that as well. So I'm going to be thoroughly sick of Lumen F by the end of it all. But yeah, it is what it is. I can't see me playing at a tournament this year. Just because of the way things are with COVID and stuff. So
I'd love to go to one, like even a one day out. I'd just be so excited at the prospect of attending anything with friends. Like maybe, I'd love to.
maybe if like the boys do Sigmas and it's safe later on in the year, like in December, I'll go to that. But realistically, like I'm just going to chip away at my Lumineth. The idea being is that don't want to rush it, and I want to get them all done and nice and good to go, for next year, because it's my dream sort of like army. I love them. All I want to do is play them. So I think there's lots of different lists, and that's like kind of where I am. So really, I've just been playing more Lumineth. And obviously looking into like reading through the handbook when that turned up, and I pre-ordered my Indomitus as well, which was really good. So looking forward to adding to my Dark Angels when I get around to it. But there's no real deadline for me. It's all about just doing the thing that I used to love in the hobby, which is just slowly building up a force. And then once that's done, like next year 2021, I imagine then it'll be be a bit more excited to go and play at tournaments. So
sweet,
cool.
Now
we can start, Russ.
All right,
something arrived.
What's that?
It's
Generals Handbook.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Generals Handbook.
Yeah, we've all got ours in front of us, so you'll probably hear flipping of pages and stuff. But
will, especially when I do this.
We will give you page references, so everything we're talking about, we'll make sure to say page whatever, and then you can follow along at home and disagree or agree with our opinions.
Yeah.
Don't at us, though, because we don't care. I'm joking, of course.
To completely contradict what Les said, we had an amazing response to our kind of last minute asking of questions, so we will get to those at the end of the podcast if you stick around for that. And some of them were really good, so thank you.
Yeah. So I think really, obviously, people who don't know what the General's Handbook is, who've just started AOS, or maybe they're like, what are you talking about? I mean, I'm assuming most people watching this know what it is. So this is the kind of the yearly book that is kind of sits over the top of the core rules that adds some nuances to open play, narrative play, and match play. We're not going to talk about open narrative play because we're a match play. We're kind of, that's our hobby. We generally don't bother with that. But
not talking about Birds of Glory or whatever it is.
Birds of Glory.
the rules for air
Skies of Slaughter.
Skies of Slaughter. Yeah.
Skies of Slaughter.
Ironically, I am tempted to try that out because it does look fun. But
I've been taking birds for years, mate. They're behind the 8 ball.
Oh, it's I said about editing this show. There's always one, isn't there? I thought. People don't know, you see, because I edit it out. They don't know what deviancy you are. There's also.
Oh, Tammy's not here. I've got to cause some problems. It'd be too normal otherwise.
You've got in the book. There's also like this stuff about the Anvil of Apotheosis, but we're not really going to talk about that because I know some people are talking about it for match play, and we got some questions on it. We'll probably address that at the end, but I'm not going to go into that because it's weird and it's not in the match play section. So. In my head, I
like it. I think it's cool, but like personally, I don't think there's a place for it in match play. But we can,
no. And even bizarrely in match play, there's 3 different ways to play, and one of them's pitch battles, one of them's meet and engagement, and the other one is coalition. And we're probably only going to take about pitch battles, so we're really stuck in our ways, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't need any more rules. Let's have less rules. That is my overriding opinion. Everything to do with the game, and we'll get to it when we talk about armies at the end as well.
I mean, coalition. We rarely play.
I can't deal with it.
Like coalition, we rarely play doubles, and we definitely don't play one phase of point meet and engagement stuff. So it's not relevant, I don't think, to what we talk about. I mean, it will be at some point in most of the.
We'll be giving a comprehensive lowdown of the bits of the match play section of the book, which we think are going to affect how people play and enjoy the game, and things you want to not get caught out by and stuff like that. So
yeah,
we'll do our best with that.
Tournament play, aren't we? So.
Yeah, but if you're playing at home casually, then it's good to know how the rules work regardless. So,
exactly. So I guess we should talk about some of the little nuance changes starting on like 72, which is there's a new special rule, isn't there?
It's one hell of a nuance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. I do.
Can I read it?
Yeah.
You can read it if you like, Byron.
It is literally called Special Rule, made especially for me. You cannot make more than 1 dice roll, excluding rerolls, to negate a wound or mortal wound that has been allocated to a model. If you could use more than 1 ability to negate allocated wounds or mortal wounds, you must pick which ability you will use. So, that means you're not going to get a 5-up followed by a 5-up, 5-up, 5-up Vermin Lord players, or if you're playing with a rogue idol, like I was the other day, you're not going to get a 5-up because it's a rogue idol followed by a 6-up bone splitters, for example. You will still get your rerolls though if you're a cheeky Daughters of Cain or other people.
Yeah, so it's some people. I did do a bit of a phishing tweet last at the weekend for this because a few of the WhatsApp groups I'm in with a couple of the local gamers, they were talking about it and they were asking questions like, does this mean I don't get my Nurgle save? Does this mean I don't get this? Because the sequencing of attacks is really important because this happens after you allocate, so that's after saves. So basically, you don't allocate those wounds until you've done all your saved and worked out how many are caused. So you do get your armor save, then you do get what we call a after save or ward save if you use the old English for it. So it's only really affects things that have double after saves. So normally stuff like, you know, Nurgle sat on mystical or something like that, you know, like like death players might have, you know, and mechanic which allows them to save mortal wounds and then do a death save on top of it, you know, like Nagash or something like that. So
the common ones are going to be you cast an effect which possibly is an AoE or possibly targets a unit which does this. So let's say you're playing in death and you've got a 6-up because you're death, and then you cast a spell which gives you a 5-up. You would only have the 5-up. Well,
so like
you may choose
Unholy Vitality and Flesh Eaters, for example.
Yeah, so exactly. Or
you wouldn't get your 6-up and your 5-up.
Or you have an army-wide special thing, but then the thing you're taking is particularly resilient, therefore it's got a 4+ invulnerable save anyway, and you wouldn't get the 4-up followed by the 6-up. Interestingly, it does say you can choose, so if you want your thing to die for any reason, which does sometimes come up, you can choose to use the worst save. It's not you must use the best one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It just means like with Death Armors, like Russ said, you're not going to be 5-up, 6-up, and then next to Mystical 6-up, it's just going to be like you just pick the 5-up and get on with it. It speeds up things.
There's certain spell laws that have a lot of like incidental protection as well. Like some things will give you an effect, and then you've also got a 6-up until your next hero phase. Maybe you don't see that as much of a bonus now because you can't have it on top of other things.
I think what's good about it, in a way, is that, for example, if you're playing like Flesh Eaters and you've got a unit of something and you're like, oh, I'll cast an Unholy Vitality on, normally it's on the Terrorgeist, but let's just say you put on a unit of Crypt Horrors or whatever, launch them across the table, you're not going to be like, oh, I've got to get a hero within range to get a 6-up as well, because it doesn't do anything. So, like, you go, I'll put this unit of skeletons on this bit of mystical, and you're like, well, actually, I don't need a hero near them now because the death save is irrelevant.
Yes, that's restrictive. It encourages, it gives you more options for more open play because you're not obsessing about getting like multiple value out of the same mechanic.
And I think really it's such a nuanced and small change, but what it does do is it stops players, you know, having to sit there while you roll lots of dice for minimal effect, you know, and it can kind of be a little bit frustrating when they've rolled an armor, they've rolled a ward, then they're rolling another ward, and you're just like, oh, come on, I just wanted something to go through.
Some people are just as tough though, aren't they? Anyone who's got a 5-up with a reroll is still just as tough as they were.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really change the resiliency of many units. It's just it just speeds up gameplay a little bit. I mean,
I think it makes a load of sense.
I kind of wish it was just one save, like ward or armor. I don't know, like weird me. Even though I play Death and Nurgle, it's kind of maybe I just hate myself. I don't know.
I mean, like we've all been there, haven't we? Where we've been playing against somebody and they've just gone like, right, I just need to put like 2 wounds through, and it's like armor save, right, save one of them, 5-up save, fail it, 6-up save, fail it, and you're like, it's fine. Then they pop the 6-up, and then it means that you win or lose the game. Whereas that frustration.
Yeah, I've lost games against Nagash a lot.
Yeah,
through exactly that. So it does make a really big difference to certain lists and certain scenarios or spells or whatever, but certain decisions whether you include something or not. Maybe now the fact that something's got 16 wounds and a load of those are going to be saved with the 6-up that followed the 5-up, we're talking about after saves here, that is a consideration. He is effectively like the amount of dice you're going to roll in a game if he's regenerated, so that's maybe like 4 or 5 wounds over the course of a battle, which is a big difference in terms of whether something dies or not.
It means you only ever get one save against mortal wounds, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Maybe
does that then make mortal wounds more powerful? Do you think,
I think
going
so.
forwards? I mean, I know that...
Yeah, I do. I would completely say so. It also makes things that have a special save. I know we're talking about a special, but a special save like Marathi is all the more special now because her thing is not that. For example,
It's just a cap, isn't it? So
yeah, anyone who's got something that is a different version of a way to be super resilient is now all the more unique. Which is that's probably how it
spell on a 4. That's not a save technically, but you could ignore the spell. Maybe it goes through your damage, then you get a save anyway. So it's,
exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, interesting.
I like it.
It's a small change, but
it's a small change, and then for some units or armies, it's a massive change.
Yeah, I just wish it was like there's more to hurt daughters in here because no one can.
Well, they were struggling, weren't they? It's so difficult for them to adapt to the meta.
So difficult for them to spam bodies that are really resilient.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least hags are 100 points.
It's fine. I'm sure hags got addressed. So there's only one other thing on this page really that's probably worth talking about, and that's
a big one for enjoyment and not doing things again and again and again.
Yeah, a part of me. So it's the endless spell cap. So you can have up to 3 endless spells now, and I can't think of any time I've ever put more than 3 or even 3 endless spells in a list. But then I'm not Tom Maudsley, so
or Zeech players that have got or Ricky McCallie, because they're
because I don't hate people. Really difficult to play against. Because the enjoyment of my game isn't focused on the misery of my opponents, so I've never written a list of endless spells. So.
This is fantastic. It's really, I think this is a big deal, and it's only a positive thing, and it makes you think more carefully about what you put in your list, and you don't end up just taking something that's 10 points that can get in the way and kind of secondary, crappy effects like that. I'm down. It's 3 per player, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, it's each. So it's like your army can have up to 3. I think endless spells. I think we talked about on another show when we were talking about what would you change, or maybe it was when I was guested on someone else's. I can't remember. But endless spells, like the cap of dispelling 1 in a turn, it makes that issue bigger because if someone can drop 5, then that's the entire game. You can only get rid of those 5 without them recasting another one. So I think having a cap of 3 does mitigate that a little bit, but yeah, it's okay. I mean, I don't think it really affects anyone. I know some people have talked about Git's lists that affected, but I think 3 is still enough, right? I mean,
it is. You just take the ones that make sense more.
You just have to make a choice of which ones are important.
I think
where does it say 3? Sorry, Les. So where does it say
in the pitched battle chart?
This is endless spells
at the top.
3 for battle host.
So, but yeah, I think with with Zeech and stuff like that, there's a lot of there was a lot of, before obviously the Zeech book came out, there was a lot of people using Exchange Host to pin people in. It was a very valid tactic against Fire Slayers for a long time because you could just get those endless spells in front of people. I think Hallowheart will probably struggle because of the amount it relies on those spells. Yeah, poor. Not like me. I played a tournament with that list, and it is dull. And also the Vermin Lord list, not that we're seeing a great many of those around. And I mean, we're not seeing anything.
5 up. What's the thing?
Yeah, but it's. I just don't think that you're gonna I mean, ultimately, you could both have 6 on the table.
Yeah. You just have to you select them rather than I can take as many as I like as long as I have the points. Now it's a resource to be managed, which is far more.
You could take if you play Gitch, you could take Scuttle Tide or whatever it is. Then 2 others like Geminids and Shackles. I mean, that's still a significant amount of board control.
So what I was going to ask you guys is, do you think now with the cap of 3 that we're just going to see the most? Because how many times have people just slotted in Quicksilver Swords, or you just got the points and put in was it Garrick's Gnashing more? Do you think that they just go away now? We just don't see those because you're always going to take the most effective mortal wound output or ranged threat, be it the portals or bridge.
I think it's going to come Yeah, a lot more targeted. But people were anyway. People were choosing the best anyway, and they're the ones that they were more likely to cast. And then the others.
But then slotting in the other stuff. Do you think now that like when you will never see Quicksilver swords on the table now because people just will, if they're taking 3,
they're cheap.
You're only going to take the better ones.
But you don't. People who were slotted those in weren't taking 3; they were taking 1 because they had 20 points left over.
But like I say that, but in the Hallowheart list, it's slotted in because it was like so cheap.
Yeah, but
it like.
Isn't it? I think
and,
those style lists, personally, and I'll talk from my own personal experience, I hate them.
Okay.
I don't think it's Age of Sigmar.
This is my own personal experience is I hate them.
It's like, I don't agree. It's like playing 7th edition again. You put
I don't think anyone
nobody can move over, nobody can move around, models can't move because they're pinned in by a spell, which makes no sense whatsoever. You're like, oh, so this thing that I can set up means that Archeon can't move. Fucking Archeon. Like, what?
It also I think it's nice that like flyers don't have that many bonuses in the game. They had them anyway, but big monsters also in general, there's a lot of downsides to playing with I don't know, a Stonehorn or so like I played with the Rogue Idol recently or something like that. Investing that many points and having some huge literal behemoth unable to step over like a in IRL, like some
handcuffs that are put down next to him.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, like I think it's nice because it is a consideration. Also, people taking big blocks, like they have always been part of our game. People love or hate Death Stars, but if your army's theme is I've got this one badass unit and it's going to do what it is, to have that hemmed in by 2 20-point things that someone doesn't even care if they damage you or not, it's just crappy. So making people consider what spells they put in more carefully, I think, is only a good thing.
I think now you'll see, like, I think the point that I was seeing is that if in these lists that people would take like a large amount of endless spells, they tend to slot in like, those 2 little ones. Whereas sorry, I can't get my words out. I've seen that more on the table, be it like a 3 powerful endless spells with 2 like ones that you don't care about slotted in, more like 20, than I've seen.
10-point things.
Yeah, more than I've seen like a normal list that has just gone, I've got 20 points. Like, because for me, I'd be like, shall I take shackles or swords, or shall I bank on getting the triumph? Because ultimately, I think the triumph's going to have more game effect long term than the 20-point, 30-point endless spell that I'm going to put in. That's how I approach it. But,
good segue, Les.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's down to personal preference. Some people would like prefer Palisade to protect like their character.
Mate, Palisades if I take Teclis, Palisades in every single one of my Lumineth lists, every single one.
Sorry,
because like, why would I
want Palisade?
Yeah.
Depends on your army.
Because it's there and it just means that you don't get shot off right.
You're weighing it up against the Triumph, right? Which you may or may not get.
Exactly.
So that's a choice you make at list design. And I think
Triumphs are good.
I think anything that makes you take choice is good. So the problem with those other lists is that you didn't really have to choose too much. You could just, I've got 500 points, I'll just chuck everything in. Whereas now
you could have everything, couldn't you?
You just bring carry a bag of malign sorcery scrolls like tossed in, in brown ink. You have to actually decide which 3 you're going to lovingly paint and take.
Yeah.
Tom.
Your bin bag full of spells, Tom.
The spells don't look to have really changed either. No. There's just one spell that's gone up, so people knew what points they are, they can still hold that in their heads, and if they do have the 20-30 points spare, then they've got the same considerations they had.
I went up Byron just out of interest.
Bridge.
Yeah, Bridge is 100 now. So I think there might be some changes on Pacific Army, but we're not going to go into points detail.
Of course, yeah. So, Soulscream Bridge and Umbral Engine went up, which is a scenery war scroll.
So Triumphs then. We're now back to the original 3, aren't we? Which is I'm happy about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I want I'm going to bang on about this a lot, but I want less rules. There's too much things for me to consider about and manage, and I'm super pleased by this. So just to refresh people's memory, rather than having like a million to roll from, you're either going to get reroll hits in one phase, reroll wounds in one phase, or reroll saves in one phase. So you have a D3 chance of getting 3 things that are super good, and one of them doesn't give you immune to battle shock or something potentially game-breaking like that. Obviously, all of them are effective, but I liked Triumph's mechanic. I think it made people really seriously consider where their points were going to be landing at, and when it got diluted, it just stopped being so much of a consideration. I like balancing of resources and considerations, which is just what we've discussed with spells, and I think this fits with that perfectly.
I think it makes the
I agree
more appealing as well, because like when I was playing like Bone Reapers, if I rolled like get an extra command point, I'd be like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Like,
what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I think there's a place for each of them as well. Like I think now, like before, you'd kind of like you'd almost be they all weighed up and they were all good, but I feel like now there's definitely you wouldn't be feel hard done by. I think most people would be going for the wounds, like you'd be like, sorry, the armor saves, you'd be like, right, I've got reroll armor saves, that's brilliant. But I think there's a place for hits, wounds in the game. Like they are quite swingy, they can win.
I think wounds is stealth. Wounds is the stealth power choice, I think, because the other two are widely available throughout the game anyway. Even if it's not a full, you get to reroll ones or whatever. Especially with rerolls after modifiers, it gets a bit less obvious. But reroll wounds is really, really good, and a lot of the time you can buff your big beastie to make it 2s to hit, which is amazing, and you might get reroll 1s to see charged or something like that anyway. And then you get to your wounds, and you've only got a 2 in 3 chance of them getting through. So reroll wounds is big. If you're wounding on a 4 or a 3, rerolls on that is extremely reliable. And it doesn't look sexy or exciting, but I was always super, super impressed by what it added in terms of predictability to like Death Stars or a monster or whatever.
Hits was always a disappointing result, wasn't it? You're like,
I think it's even less appealing now because, like, obviously with the command abilities of the reroll ones for hits, like you've almost got that. Most things are hitting on 3s anyway, right?
Yeah,
like
3s rolling ones, then you roll it. It's a bit meh.
Yeah, like I mean, it's handy if you've got it outside of that command ability range of your general or your hero. But I think like I said, I think there isn't much in the game that allows you to reroll wounds.
No,
there really is.
I think one of the good things, I'm just going to double check it before I speak and end up looking like an idiot, is that you can reroll hit rolls. It doesn't say failed hit rolls. So if you've got some unit that pops mortals on a 5 or a 6, you can
go
fish
fishing.
Those. So
super good point.
It's that's the power, because a lot of the other hit abilities like reroll ones, whereas actually you might go, well, I've got a thing that means that on a 6 I do a mortal and I'm fighting something that's super armor save.
It's how Russ killed Stardrakes with Spirit Hosts.
Yeah, so that's I used to love gemming into my own Spirit Hosts. They couldn't even hit it normally, so we couldn't bounce through the because didn't get an armor save.
I love this stuff like that.
Through your own unit and go, well, you're -1 to hit, and so am I, but I don't want to hit you. I just want to do mortals on 6s. So it's Spirit Host, man. Get me right there.
Bros, they love reroll saves. They love any triumph.
Oh, reroll saves on a Nighthorn army, you're just like, they're not dying this turn.
Amazing.
But, so triumph, subtle change, but back to how it was. I prefer that.
I love it. All this stuff, I'm like tick, 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 tick. They could have made endless spells too, and I would have been happy also.
Just binned them off. No, I like endless spells. I'm joking. Don't quote me on that. I'm messing around.
So I love endless spell models. I think they're amazing. I think the idea and like the reason they're in the game is brilliant. I just hate the way that tournaments use them.
On 102, we've got the Realm of Battle rules. So these basically replace malign sorcery and the core rules for realms. So that basically means, if I'm reading it right, that means that there's no malign sorcery artifacts, because you have to use the artifacts in here. And I'm not sure, doesn't it, that if magic laws are still in place, or are they?
Well, I mean, if you read, what does it say? It says if you decide to take if you decide that your army is from a specific mortal realm and wish to make one of your artifacts of power a realm artifact, you must pick the realm artifact for your chosen mortal realm from the following pages, instead of using an artifact from malign sorcery.
It's just regarding artifacts.
It's just artifacts. I think that that you can still, dependent on the TO, they'd still be using the sorcery, the malign sorcery rules for spells and stuff. That's how I read it anyway.
Yes,
It's not,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But
so yeah, it just stops the, like, you know, the Aether Quartz Brooch rubbish. So I think what's really interesting and really good is that with the regards to the Realm of Battle rules, for me personally anyway, is that the fact that we now don't have to choose artifact, although the fact that now you can't take artifacts from malign sorcery, it allows books that have got a very good selection of artifacts in them inherently to sort of like take a step up power.
So
like Maggot-kin of Nurgle, they've got a really good selection of artifacts. So now they're going to more likely go to the book and use those artifacts than maybe try and find, you know, an Aether Quartz Brooch or something like that. In my opinion, anyway. I'm not sure what the rest of you guys think.
Yeah, I think it is far more likely people take interesting particular things to their races than this incredibly obvious option there.
I think it impacts more lists than others. So obviously, like, you had things like in the Tyrants of Blood list where you're using things like, you know, Gaia Strike or the Amber Glaive to get reach and pluses to hit, or you're using a lot of the lists that are about the Aether Quartz recycling of command abilities isn't a thing. So that hurts certain armies more than others. I think there's a few of the Nighthaunt sort of armies that want to use their Spectral Recall ability over and over again. Obviously that gets hit. Anyone like there's lots of lists that use command.
Yeah, Stormcast had it as well. You could take basically the same thing twice because it was a different artifact with the same effect.
Yeah, Ten Swords had it. Had a similar list artifact, so you could double it up.
It's I think Thermal Rider Cloak's there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna miss that keeper running and charging, jumping over bits. You know, what was the other one that we saw on quite a lot? The Cauldron of Blood. That was
Stonehorns.
Yeah. You know,
just stops you from being trapped behind your own dudes. Basically, it gives you flexibility. It's the reason that I ran fire.
Extra 4 inches as well. I mean, it's like
do you think that this is going to fundamentally change? Like, obviously, it's going to change list design, but do you think it is going to fundamentally change the way people approach playing and building their armies now that they haven't got that crutch? So, like, for instance, like the Stonehorn, like Byron said, you're now going to have to change the way you're playing because you're not going to be able to just jump over your units and stuff.
You can't screen in the same way.
Things like that. Pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, like, Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon just got way worse, right?
Yeah, because the artifacts in Legion aren't very good anyway.
It got way more interesting, but
I think it makes Legion of Blood more appealing because they've actually got some good character-based monstrous artifacts, whereas it's definitely interesting. I think
can you still use the Death Order Destruction ones?
I don't think so, because you'd have to be your allegiance, so you wouldn't get any of your allegiance abilities. You'd have to be an allegiance order, but then you'd only get the ones.
Yeah.
Yes, that's relevant for me and one other person.
Were they in the last handbook or are they in the core rules?
They are in the core rules.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
So I never use them. So.
No.
But like people used to use the Lux Stone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Still choose to use that.
So yeah, basically I think that's a pretty massive change. I mean, it's the impact of that. I think if I look at lists that I've written in the past, I tend to lean towards the book artifacts anyway, because I like those.
Yeah.
I mean, Nurgle you pretty much always went to your book because, you know, Wither Stave, you know, Rustfang, there's so many good artifacts, so you never had many because the battalions were so bad. So I
think the more recent books have better ones in general.
Yeah, I think it's for sure. I mean, even if I'm thinking about especially if you're taking a grand host or big city or whatever you want to call it, or legion, then you have to take that one. Yeah. So, you know, if you're playing Petrifex or you're playing, you know, Mortis Praetorian, you have to take that artifact. So you immediately can't go to Realm of Sorcery anyway. Sorcery. So it doesn't. I think a lot of these armies that don't run formations they never took them anyway. I think the biggest impact will be I mean, I think Legion of Gash is hit pretty badly because they never really run formations because they're not good enough.
Yeah.
They don't get forced to take an artifact when they pick their Legion because they're just an allegiance. It's like you take Legion of Blood or
Yeah. Sacrament.
Or Sacrament or Legion of Night or whatever. So you could go straight to the book. So you could go straight to Ethereal Amulet or straight to Thermal Rider or straight to Aether Quartz. Obviously now you can't. So you're thinking, not really sure. I think maybe Sylvaneth may be affected by it a bit because they've got some amazing artifacts. They got lots of ways to get cheap formations in.
Yeah.
What about Deepkin? Who is a Deepkin player? Did you ever? Did you have to run?
I never. I think with the Deepkin book, you tend to, in my opinion, sort of like gravitate to the stuff like Clay to Midnight or it just makes sense. I never really went down the route of including any artifact.
They don't have heavy, big, non-special characters particularly either, do they? So the stuff where this makes the biggest difference is by definition going to be on things that are like around 400 points or greater and aren't a named character. Which
can artifact the
aspect of Storm and Seas. I mean, that was the only time I did use it. I did use the Ethereal Amulet on the aspect of the Storm back when I was running that when the book came out. But
isn't the Volturnus Eel list all about stacking command points for
it is, but I never took the Aether Quartz brooch in it because you inherently get enough command points anyway. Because in my opinion, you could do loads, and like maybe I was doing it wrong. The internet will tell me I was doing it wrong, but I didn't ever take the Aether Quartz brooch because by turn 3 chances are you've got a formation, so you've got 1 CP.
You need to be alive to use that stuff as well, right? And that probably involves taking the Cloud of Midnight if you're going to try and make a.
That would be you couldn't put it on Volturnus anyway. It'd always be on like the little Tidecaster guy. But I don't think it really affected. I mean, for me, I've never really delved into the malign sorcery artifacts with the armies that I took. It would be when you look back at it as like Stormcasts. I always found that the Stormcast book had exactly what I needed in it most of the time.
It's really good and quite varied as well in their applications.
Exactly, there's so much to choose from. IDNF, I never took it other than initially when the book first came out when I went to I was taking the aspect. And then other than that, I've been in team events with IDNF. So most of the time, if I would have taken a malign sorcery artifact, you couldn't double up on it, so a teammate would have had it. Or I was taking Fire Slayers, and obviously Fire Slayers, it was all about Hermdar. So you just, you have to take the artifacts in that, in that sort of great nation or like lodge. So it didn't really affect me much.
Does this make special characters more of a consideration now? It must do, right? Because one of the reasons to not take a special character is you could put Ethereal Amulet on your zombie dragon. You could do this. So does this mean that it's now more viable to take Manfred, to take Gordrak, to take whoever? But that's got to be a thing, right?
I think Prince Vordry just went up in stock.
That's what I was going to say. Vordry, I think, now is you take him, don't you?
I used to take him anyway, but now that he because you're not, everyone was like, oh yeah, but you can't give him an artifact. But then the artifacts you can give your normal zombie dragon are, what are you going to give him? I mean, there are some decent ones, but there isn't an Ethereal Amulet in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, sticking with death, it perhaps means that you're more likely to take Neferata because she has a spell that gives that effect or something as well. You can't just turn up with it. Maybe so. I think particular lists are they could change by 800 points at the drop of a hat because of this stuff.
I'm not a fan of Neferata. Don't like her. Honestly,
okay.
I tried using it before. I just don't get on her at all.
At least you're not going to see that spam of her minus
No, because you don't really get the command points to spam it because unless you got the brooch.
That's what I mean. We're not going to see that anymore, are we?
So I didn't have access because it was a team event.
Yeah.
Somebody else, I think Byron used it in his stupid bone splitter list. So I never got to use it. So
it worked.
I got 1.5 turns of that defensive bubble, which is okay. It was great in missions where you could score heavily, duality or free places, because you could basically park on all the objectives and then just go, you're not killing them, and then you're you've won the game as long as you win priority into 3. So I think
cool.
Yeah, I think it has a big effect, and I think it will shift things around. It'll be quite subtle, but I think definitely Legion have got weaker. I mean, there's the death saves of kind of, you can't stack them, so that's going to have a little bit of an impact. And then obviously you've got the zombie dragons gone down in stock, in my opinion. I think it affects...
What about cabbages?
I think they've got some decent artifacts in there, because when I was writing my Iron Jaws list, I was going to... And also, if you take like Iron Suns, you've got to take their artifact, and you've got like ignore red artifacts. You've got like weapons that do... I can't remember the name of it, but there's a really nice weapon in there that's good. So I think there's enough in there that you don't need it. And actually, even when I was
quite cool,
list, I was going, do I take this one or do I take that one? So it wasn't like an obvious, you go to malign sorcery.
Yeah.
I think.
So here's a question for you both: do you think there's any artifacts in the realm of battles, like the new selection, that are actually good? Do you think there's any that you would maybe include? So for instance, Legion of Nagash. Do you think that you take one? I mean, there's the realm of metals, like ignore rend one. There's one that rerolls charge.
That I thought would be decent.
Like if you said about the zombie dragon, if you take Prince Vordry, you base your army in realm of beast, and then give the other zombie dragon reroll charge rolls for realm of beast.
So the rage blade would be decent in Khorne. If you were playing the guy with the big axe, the infinite rage, because you want the wound rolls. So 6 to hit gives you 2 hits. So rather than having the +1, it kind of mitigates that a little bit. The plate of perfect protection from metal, like you said, that could go on a zombie dragon quite happily. Or I think there's
like I said, I think the beast one's not bad. Again, because you've got you reroll charge, and then they've got the command ability that keeps the damage treated as 0 wounds taken as well. For the realm command. Oh, that's a realm command. Ignore me. That would be if you're playing in the realm. Ignore me. But it's. So I think the artifact
can be affected by this a lot, aren't they? Because they have to be in one of 2 realms. They don't have a choice.
Yeah, but when you only get the command ability if you're in the realm. So if you're fighting in the realm of...
I meant the items rather.
The artifact that they take.
You got Trickster's foil, reroll 1s to wound, and you got reroll 1s to hit, reroll 1s to save. Is 3 of the artifacts, isn't it? So that's Death, Shadow, and Light, which is okay. But
life is like a generic heal wound, which if you're in a Sylvaneth list, you may want to put that. But I think you're going to take the Sylvaneth abilities anyway.
There's ones that heals you and everything around you on a 4-up and stuff like that. So I don't think I would go there. But I mean, the only 2 in there that I mean, reroll charge is useful, purely because if you fail the charge, you're not doing anything. But it depends. I think it little bit depends on what you're trying to do with the piece. I think what the malign sorcery going away does, it limits your options to have to change the role of a big hero into something, because you don't have that anymore. Like if I want a super defensive fast piece, I'll give it the ethereal. I want it to be really fast and aggressive, I'll give it the thermal rider. I want to rely on this command ability from this hero, I need the Aether Quartz. So all those options have disappeared. So I think now the utility of big monstrous heroes has dropped, particularly in even like Slaanesh not being able to thermal rider their keepers and stuff like that. And there are good alternatives, but they're not as good, because if they were better or as good, you would have seen them more regular. So I think it's definitely going to shift. It's like a subtle shift of the boundaries, and it might. There might be a list that gets completely broken by it. I think the Nighthorn I don't know if it's a Legion of Grief list that relied on the Aether Quartz, gets broken. But it's like, well, you'd have to find a new thing, a new list.
It affects people more who have a license to take a formation that's really good, or even a couple of formations that's really good, which isn't many people, but like Slaanesh, they'd have like Rend 3 and flying or whatever you could pick. So It's just a tighter set of decisions that's more tailored to your individual army, which makes absolute sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think we've. I don't know if we want to say anything else about those, but I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
I think that's it's quite just. I just want to like see about whether or not you thought there was any that you'd want to take. That was essentially.
To be honest, I haven't really looked at them. I did when I skim read them, and when I saw because normally that's the sort of thing I do when I write a list. You know, I'll have an in my head. I'll be thinking, how do I maximize this thing? And then I look at the options, and one of those options is those realm artifacts. So I did skim read and saw the Rend one, and I thought that's good because I know some armies have access to that. So I think there's one in I think the Iron Sun's artifact is like reduces Rend, but I didn't in my head. I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, that's really good, because in my head I'm not writing a list. But if I was writing a list, and I thought, oh right, that makes more sense to take that than anything else. But I know for like Bone Reapers, I never went outside the book because they've got so many good artifacts. No. You're in a legion, so you're taking you've got to take the Mortis Praetorian artifact anyway. So you only get one if you've got a formation, and then the artifacts in there's some really good ones, and you just never need to go outside of that book. You know, same with War Clans. I was tossing up between a malign sorcery or a War Clan one. So, in Nurgle, I always went to the Nurgle book. Legion is the only army that I play and maybe Flesh Eaters, that's been adversely affected by this. I think particularly Nighthaunt are going to suffer, because they tend to feel a little bit. You don't have those. Again, it's because the Death Grand Hosts or whatever, they don't have those for those books. So like Nighthaunt don't have it. No. You know, Legion doesn't have it. So you can immediately go straight to an artifact you want, and those artifacts suit. You know, Ethereal doesn't do anything in Nighthaunt, but Aether Quartz is amazing. So it immediately has a massive impact. But
it's I'll have to double check all the Nighthaunt rule artifacts to see if there's actually, see if there's anything that you would never have taken before, because you would always be going down Aether Quartz, and see if there's any sort of like diamonds in the rough then, essentially.
There are some good ones. Fine. Yeah, there's some decent ones, but they're not. They're not really. The thing is to maximise the army's potential. You know, there's only a couple things that you really care about, and a lot of those artifacts are just like nuances to heroes, and your heroes are all pretty rubbish, to be honest. So.
The words out of my mouth, like they don't have a big thing that you can make way better. Therefore, taking Aether Quartz was the only thing that was a force multiplier for the entirety of the army.
Like, you could even argue then that they've got better because they didn't rely on a big thing of an artifact to be a linchpin in their army. So.
Yeah.
So, again, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, this is all speculation, right? Like until we get table time with these sorts of things. Somebody out there, like, I know Luke Morton's really excited about Nighthaunt, so there's got to be something there. I don't know how this has changed, like, the handbook dropping has changed how he's going to approach that, but I know that he's excited for Nighthaunt.
Yeah, they're not a bad army. I mean, they've got stuff going for them, but it's just that one of the popular, I think it was a Legion of Grief list, actually, which, again, because they don't even have their own artifacts, I don't think, so. Well, they don't have formations. I think they don't have formations, so that's sort of us talk about the realms, and we're not going to go through like what each realm does and what each ability is, but essentially the escape feature is the normal scenery rules on top of the scenery rules you roll, so it's like doubling up like Overgrown or whatever. One thing I would say, looking through it, when you played the old realms, like when you're in like you had like ways to strike first or teleport your entire army, that's all kind of gone. You do have a redeployment ability in Shadow, but it's going to it's a unit,
the hero, isn't it?
18 of a friendly hero, and then recalling to that hero, so it's almost like pulling the unit out rather than using it as an aggressive tactic.
That feels a lot more
the on-me command ability. So I like that they've been toned down, because I found that some of the games I played, it completely flipped the game on its head. Like when I played a Skaven army that had that, I can't remember, I think it's a trait where it's like the cunning, where you get extra command points in light with his plague monks, and he was always striking first, and I was just, I can't do anything like this. No. Like, because I can't keep up with his command points. and he's got 3 units. If he had 2 units of 40 plague monks, and I was just like, well, this is just me done. You know, I just can't win this game, and that was only because we were in that realm. So, I wasn't a big. But then I've played games where that's made a difference when I've played against someone who's got ASF, and it means you can compete against them. So
yeah, it balances it.
But I think it's
I always found the shadow one.
Yeah.
I always found the shadow one a bit weird, wasn't it? Where you could like
too much.
That mansion, wasn't it? I can't remember the name of it. Where you pull them off the table and they come on from the table edge, and you'd be like,
ridiculous. It just meant that if you
I'm now, yeah.
I won multiple games with gotcha moments using that because people forgot about it.
Oh yes, it's not the type of thing that should be. And also, if you get a good player who turns up, who knows this stuff inside out and back to front, and is playing with Nagash, for the sake of argument, the fact that he could do ridiculous things like twice in some realms, and he was pretty strong anyway, just made some things just not even the game.
Byron's been on the wrong end of Nagash's finger more times than anyone else.
Yeah.
Where to show me where he touched you? Show me where he touched you. So
everywhere. Amazing.
Yeah, and then we've got so I guess we'll talk about auxiliary objectives, which is a big change for the scenarios.
Well, they 102, weren't they? No.
What is this big change? How does it work?
So the biggest change is there are no kill points for missions. So mission deciding if you're minor or major. So if you're on a minor victory because you didn't do the major, it actually comes down to auxiliary objectives, which effectively work a little bit like hidden agendas, how they got changed for a lot of tournaments where you reveal
a big very similar.
And then you basically pick
two, isn't it?
You pick 2 auxiliary, and then you reveal them at the beginning of the game, and then if you get more of those than your opponent, then you basically can win the mission. If you don't do them, if you're tied on like the major points or whatever, depending on the mission, it affects how they work.
You also have to assume that some tournaments will allot a points value to these to work stuff out potentially as well. So like getting the major is worth 4, getting each secondary is worth 1 point each or something.
Yeah, so it's like, ETC and what we did at Facehammer South Coast, South Coast didn't go ahead, but that's what they're going to be. So, but Facehammer last year, we were like, well, you get between 4 points is deny, and you deny their 2, get your 2, that's 4. You get 2, they get 2, that's 2 each. There's 4 points to divide between you. So it's kind of like an official way of using that, I guess. And you don't need to count the victory points of what you kill. So
you just allocate points to the win, major, minor, draw,
scenario
and
points for the victory. And if you're tied, or will depend on the mission. So if it says, like, for example, like total commitment, it says the player with the most victory points wins, and that's victory points by controlling the objectives.
Yeah.
If you're tied, then you check to see how many of their auxiliary objectives they completed. If one player's done more than their opponent, they win a minor. If both completed the same, it's a draw. So I actually think you'll see more draws because of this.
Yeah, I do. But I'm down with what that's going to do to the games. Like, it means that if you come up in a rock, paper, scissors matchup where, I don't know, you've taken Beastman and your opponent's taking Change Host or something like that, where you couldn't just have a chance. Anyway, you can try your best to deny them getting the major and then try and sneak a character off a board edge or something like that. It's really cool.
I mean, out of the book as well, if you play it word by word out of the book, do you think that will affect how we look at lists going forward? Because you're not going to have to worry so much about smashing your opponent off the table because, like,
you still got to win the major. So
yeah. I think some techie lists, like we've spoken about Nighthaunt, we've spoken about Ideneth and stuff like that, like some super technical lists which have very technical players playing them, I think they will absolutely look at things in a different way. But for the large part, if you make your opponent dead, you've probably won the game still.
Because I think we got to a point where we were almost playing this anyway, because victory points was like the tertiary thing that didn't really matter. So most events that I went to or was involved in, victory points weren't a thing anyway. You might get extra points for getting more VPs, but it's not like the old days when VPs was everything, and it was about conservation and smashing. And I find it funny, you still see people like message about it and they say, oh, how do you think now that people won't play as conservatively and they won't try and smash every model off the table? No, they still will.
You win them. Yeah, you win the major if you smash people off the table, don't you?
Still a super valid tactic.
And you still will protect an important unit, and you might chuck a unit into combat you don't need to, but there's so many times when you do something you think is irrelevant and it becomes relevant later on. Like you chuck those 5 liberators forward just for lols, and then you realise if I had those 5 liberators sat back for 2 turns, they would have been in a position to run to the middle and capture that objective. So I don't think it really changes how anyone should approach playing the game, because you play to win, so you're still playing the mission and the objectives. Obviously, you're going to try and play the objectives, but we were playing that anyway with hidden agendas and majors anyway. So
I think maybe you consider it like, so for example, when we went to our last team tournament, the team that won, they really heavily considered all of this stuff at a very, very tip-top level. I think maybe you give some nuance, or you run down the list and you like, in an average event, if I take this hero, I'm going to have an option at these 7 safely, or like battle line is important, therefore I'm going to give that slightly more preference than I would have, or make my battle line bigger to deny it from my opponents. But I think it's a nuance rather than a fundamental thing.
Yeah, and I think it will depend on the event whether they limit, you can only use it once. You know. So
the GW sort of like tournament pack in here says that you select 3 agendas as well, because they're only running the 5 reigns usually. So again, like you're gonna
18.
Yeah. So I think it's a great tool that TOs can use, and I think they're a lot more thought out than the agendas, because the agendas were designed to do something else, and we were using them for this. Whereas it's kind of designed for what we're doing. So I think they're better. They're not as like some of the hidden ones were like, you know, capturing more objectives than your opponent, and you get the first turn, you just run onto it. I've done that. You know, it's like you can't stop it. So at least some of these are a lot more kind of balanced. So it'd be interesting to see how they pan out.
We won't know about this until like 2 events in or something, will we?
No, and I'm sure TOs will tweak. You know, like you said, like Les says, in the Conquest Unbound bit at the back, there's basically tournament packs. So if you wanted to run an event and never run one before, and you go, I want to run a pitch battle Coalition of Death tournament pack, there's a pack for it. So you just go and run it straight out the General's Handbook, which is quite nice, I think, because there's a lot of stuff when you put a tournament on. It's all well good to say, we run pitch battle, but there's a lot of nuances around pitch battle that regular tournament players will want to know, and you'll get bombarded with questions like, how do you score VPs? What about endless spells? How do you score battalions? So if you're a new TO, you could just run it straight out of here and then see how it goes, and then tweak it later, but it gives you a really nice baseline. So I think it's really nice that they've put tournament packs for the different game modes in the actual book.
Yeah, they've even got team events and stuff in here as well. If you wanted to run your own team event straight at the back, straight at the book,
Coalition
so
Death
really good.
You know, pitch battle, team format battles, team tournament format, open war, army generators in there as well. And I think at the front as well, which probably needs Warren talking about, is the player's code on page 4. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Yeah, I've read through it, which is like
talks about like it's basically like how to be good to your opponent.
Be nice.
Yeah.
How to not be a dick when you get to the table.
Well, I think it's not even about that. It's just about things to consider to make sure that you're doing everything you can to have an enjoyable experience for both players. So, you know, it's like, you know, because if you don't arrive on time, it doesn't mean you're a dick. It just means you maybe something come up. But, you know, it says try to arrive on time. You know, these are principles. They're like behaviours, like etiquette, which I think is quite nice to have in there, because
I completely agree.
A lot of players that do it regularly, they probably don't. Some people won't even think about that impact that has on somebody until someone has that conversation with them. But a lot of people don't have that conversation because they're like, well, I've known him, and they're going to meet this guy again, and I don't want to have that conversation, and it's socially awkward, so I'm just going to keep it to myself.
It's like the give your opponent a chance to examine your dice rolls before picking up the dice, stuff like that. You know, it's and I always have like that conversation at the start where I'm like, I'm not gonna, like, here are my dice, I'm picking out the misses so you can see the hits.
Yeah.
In front. So it's that whole thing, and like try and roll dice in front of your opponent as opposed to rolling them behind terrain and stuff like that. the standard thing that you'd expect from regular gamers, I guess.
Never collude with an opponent to fix the outcome of a game. Never complain about
we all know people who've done that.
Or your opponent's good luck.
Oh, wow.
Avoid distracting an opponent when they're trying to concentrate and be respectful of their personal space. Remind your opponent about rules they may have forgotten to use or that they have used incorrectly, especially when doing so is in your opponent's advantage.
Yeah, it's really good. I think it's really good that all this stuff is in there.
Ask permission before touching your opponent's models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all really good stuff.
All this stuff is just, measure moves and distances carefully and accurately. So I think if you followed those, then you would make the gaming experience for the other person a lot better.
A more enjoyable opponent, absolutely.
So I think it's a really nice summary that's there. And I think that the page before it, where it's a bit more detailed, sort of fundamental, talking about, I think if you're going to read anything in the book, I think everyone should just read those 2 pages anyway, just to and just think to yourself, do I do that? Because I'm sure all of us have done one of those things at some point in any game.
Yeah.
I think, so I think it's quite a good thing, but I know we're kind of tangenting off a little bit, but.
Well, I'm going to struggle with the avoid using language your opponent might find offensive, because like when I play you on the table
before the game, I ask, generally speaking, if it's someone I don't know is down with my foul mouth, then I try.
I hope you worded like that. Are you down with my foul mouth?
Yeah. Amazing. But yeah, I cuss too much at the table. That's like a force multiplier if I like you and get to know you more. So like I've had people like me and Ben Curry shouting at each other.
The more he likes you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, essentially, like me and Ben Curry like arguing at the table. I think someone was like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I'm like, Ben Curry's like, "I've had more fucking trophies than you've had hot dinners, mate," and stuff like that. When we're like, talking at the table, and like people are like, "What's going on?"
I think they like each other. Yeah.
Didn't you have like a 4-hour game at a Sheffield one year? And you were like,
no, that was Terry and Ben. Terry and Ben had a 4-hour game. They stopped playing, had lunch, come back, and were still arguing about it after lunch just because. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's really important to have a read of, and I think from a terms of complete, if you'd never gone to a tournament and you read that,
it's the most important page in the book.
You know how to expect that. If you wanted to run a tournament for the first time, you've got a pack. And I think it's a lot clearer than previous ones where it's all in one place on more about the overall experience than just rules that are only used in the context of a pack that someone else has modified.
Yeah, for sure. So people who haven't been to tournaments, that's what you can expect. And vastly in my experience as well, that's one of the nice things. People do consider this stuff. Like we consider this stuff on an event basis. Like going, that's a new player, therefore I'm going to be super clear about this. Like that's part of your duty as a nice person, is to educate people. Like if they've never been to an event before and you're like, well, I'm going to roll these here where you can see it. My name's Byron. Nice to meet you. If you are unsure about anything I'm doing, then just ask. I'm quite happy to explain anything. Are you new to your book? In which case you will obviously help them out with it if you know it better than them. All that stuff is a matter of course, but it's nice for people to know reading that perhaps that's what experienced players will be like.
Yeah, and I think when I first went to events, like when you've been playing in a gaming club, and you'll see this as well, like when you go to your local store or your gaming club that hasn't got a lot of experienced event players, there's a lot of really bad behaviour.
Oh yeah, there is. It's awful.
Especially when it's almost like people treat it like they're, because you're comfortable with these people as well, you're more likely to break those rules because they're people you know in Bunny Quest.
Sorry, I'm 15 minutes late. I was hungry or something.
And then people getting frustrated about I've seen more tantrums at club games than I have at tournaments.
Yeah.
I used to work in a store, so I used to see a lot of it, and I think when you go to an event, you almost take your whatever your environment mentality is to an event. So I've got a gaming group on a Thursday night, and we went to something. It wasn't GW related, but basically our gaming group is not for the faint of heart. We've got a lot of big personalities, so there's a lot of ex-military, there's a lot of really inappropriate,
Mr. B,
inappropriate kind of banter and in-jokes, And when you go to like an event where you're playing people who don't know you and don't know your in jokes and don't know you can't act the same way.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, what is up with this guy? He's
That first event ever, and they're actually really uncomfortable already, and then you've got like coming in. It's just
But when we play each other, we can do that because we know each other too well, so we can. So I think it's just having that, understanding that, and having a guideline is a good thing, and also it helps and I think giving feedback to someone on the table is difficult, especially when you don't know them, to say, actually what you're doing is making me a little bit uncomfortable. Can you just
or I don't care particularly, but your next opponent might find this hard.
I've actually done it before when I've said to someone, look, the way you're rolling your dice, I think I played a guy, and I heard a few people say to me, oh well, he's been a bit dodgy and stuff, and I was watching how he was behaving, and it looked like he was concealing stuff, and the way he was doing his dice, it looked like he was manipulating the dice, and I said, I know you're not, but it looks really bad the way you're behaving, because you're picking up things before I see them, and you're rolling stuff behind terrain and going, oh yeah, that was a 6. And I know you're not cheating, but it looks
and you're picking
like
at the hits instead of the misses.
And it looks
I think we had the same.
Yeah, we did have the same guy in the same event. So
same guy at the same tournament. Yeah, and we had the same conversation. It's quite funny.
So I said, like, and it was one of his first events, and since I've seen him since then playing at events and doing taking on board that. But that's quite a difficult conversation to have, because I mean, I've been around the block long enough to to sort of have that conversation, but it's tricky,
and he's gone strength to strength now, hasn't he? Like the guy, like
Jack's always been a good. No, sorry. It wasn't Jack.
No.
So we did the I think the scenarios. So obviously you've got 18 still. Sorry, Byron. I know you hate scenarios.
Oh, God, can we not just have...
don't rant.
Oh, that's an average tournament.
The face was enough of a rant. You've done it. That was it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was enough. So
barely count that high. It's bullying dyslexic people.
You've got 20 digits.
Yeah.
You should be all right. So yeah, obviously you've got the ones in the main rulebook which haven't changed, and then you've got the two
just
new tables.
Deployment-y stuff, isn't it? Like Total Conquest. I'm not sure if that deployment's changed.
Oh yeah, but what I mean is when you roll on the chart, Blood and Glory, Escalation, and Border War, they're in the core rules, so they're not. They're the same. So the ones, all the other ones are from this handbook. They've been. You can run the old handbook, it says, if you want, but I'm pretty sure no one will. So, in terms of the missions, then we're not going to go, because there's 12 of them. We're not going to run through every mission. I think what we'll do is we'll just talk, because we'll probably do a second show where we do that in more detail. I think what we'll talk about really is there are some nuanced changes which are to do with bonuses for types of units capturing objectives. So some of the missions,
really interesting ones.
Yeah, so like Total Conquest, if you have a friendly leader within 6 of the objective, you get an additional point. So Total Conquest is one of my favourite missions. They've changed the deployment map from the staircase.
Yeah.
And actually...
You're not measuring it dice.
Well, to be honest, when you look at it, you generally deployed in the opposite boxes anyway.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So, like, it kind of doesn't make any difference. And, so I it's a nice little nuance change that basically leaders score extra points. So...
Same with Scorched Earth, isn't it? Like, if a player controls an objective in enemy territory, while there's a friendly leader unit within 6 of it, they score 1 additional victory point when it is raised.
Big deal.
So, that's good as well. It's like little tiny bits that you could miss, but will make a difference in scoring points when you're playing your opponent and getting those wins.
Yeah, and like some of the changes, like Battle for the Past is basically the same, apart from the auxiliaries. Star Strike, you're not on a 1d6 roll now, and you've lost the 2d6 rolls for the extreme, double ones going in the corner and all that kind of stuff. So the grid of objectives is very central. So I think that's really like a lot more manageable.
Yep.
You know, you've got stuff like Scorched Earth, like Les just talked about. You've got focal points where you score extra points if you've got a monster or behemoth within 6 of an objective.
Yay! Which is good again. You know, like if you're playing that army, you know, if you're playing against a behemoth army, like there's loads of them about at the moment, right? Then it, you know, you can rack up those extras. Especially if it's close, it does matter. Make sure if you're scoring it correctly.
Makes a difference if you're playing Beast Claw, right?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I've written down like how much I enjoy the interesting mechanic with one of the new missions for forcing the hand and how you choose primary objectives. I don't know if you guys have looked at that one at all.
Which one's that?
Forcing the hand, one of the new ones.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one. No.
That's really, really good. So it says at the start of each player's turn, the opposing player picks one of their own objectives to be the primary objective for that turn.
Yeah,
then obviously that makes a difference if you want to keep, like, you know, depending on if your opponent where you want that objective to be, it's going to be interesting whether you pick it far away so you can score it with like a unit of 5 guys, but then they can get cleared off. Definitely interesting.
Well, I think it doesn't. It's because it says that at the start of each player turn, the opposing player picks one of their objectives to be the primary for that turn. If it's player's A turn, player B picks one of the player B to be the primary objective. So basically,
if
it's your go, I would pick which one is your primary, and you have to try and get it.
Yeah, so you pick the one that's the hardest, which is really interesting.
Yeah, so if it's my go, you would pick your own objective, which would be your primary, because it's your primary objective you pick, not mine.
So I pick one of mine to be your primary.
You pick your opponent's one and you try and make it as hard for them as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're quite close together. You'd just be like, if you're in, you'd be go like, oh right, I'm going to put it in the corner because you're not going to get to it in time, or you're not going to get to it.
One that's got like 60 plague bearers on it, and go that one.
Yeah.
The something that I found really interesting. This is the only one I've played, which is the only reason I clocked this. The Blade's Edge, which is on 85. There's 6 objectives. They're relatively close together. They're relatively far forward. They're 18 inches forward, not 12. So there's this big like cluster blob in the middle.
Yeah.
And objectives. At the start of each battle round, after the first, the player taking the second turn in that battle round can pick one objective on the battlefield and remove it from play. No restrictions. Not that you control, not anything. You can pick that one that your opponent has completely comprehensively got and you can never have a chance of getting it, and you just take it away from them. Or you pick one of yours and you want away from it and then go and beat up your opponent on theirs. Especially when you're going second. That's huge. It's super interesting. It's so interesting. I'm not sure whether I like it or not, but I like how how interesting.
It's going to be
because the choice of going.
It's going to be like the tactical nuance.
Becomes important.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hugely, massively. Like, I have to play it a couple more times, but arguably, like, too much of an advantage. It's crazy big, I think.
It almost retains that element of relocation orb without the relocation orb randomness.
Without the horrible bit.
But actually, the last relocation orb I actually really liked, because I didn't think it was that random.
Yeah, to be fair, it was just a bit more, wasn't it? Yeah, I think that's a massive thing. There's not been anything like that in the game so far. Oh, I pick an objective that I'm not controlling and we just get rid of it for the rest of the game. Crazy.
Especially if you've got like a really slow enemy unit bunkered on it. Say it's like one of the ones on the far right of the board. And you just go, right, well, I'll just get rid of that one because you've bunkered
Sorry, Fire Slayers.
Really slow.
You get board position and then you go second in the with a defensive unit and then you go, right, it's now I won the roll, you can go first. I'll delete the objective you've got tucked in behind you and I'll keep the ones that are tucked behind my units.
Yep.
You can weather the storm of the attacks and then you're going to score. So I think, Nurgle, looking at the missions, I think Nurgle lists are going to be really strong in this handbook.
Yeah. There's also some aggressive, fast siege combat lists that I think would own a lot of these. Like getting over there and pushing someone off something. With things being closer together, there's probably some units that wouldn't have got a look in as much in the past. But the objectives are, I think on average, they're closer together than they were with the last set of things as well. Just adding a few in where they're closer together and removing a few where they're further apart makes a really big difference. Like
Plus,
huge. So
removing the randomness of relocation orb and star strikes less random and more centralized, that you're not going to the edges of the battlefield as much.
Yeah, I don't think armies like Deepkin, perhaps, that excelled in flexibility, speed, popping up, blah blah blah. I don't think they have as much of a advantage as they did, and obviously they had disadvantages in other ways. But if you went to an event and you rolled up a few of the fast scenarios, they did really. There's one Blood and Glory where they did like twice as well as they would normally do on average, and it's because all the scenarios were aggro ones, with things being close together.
I look at the missions, there isn't any with the objectives super spread out.
That's the biggest thing I noticed.
Better part of Valor, for sure, but you need battle line units.
Yeah.
So I think Eels, you can be, but they're battle line if, aren't they?
Yeah, they are battle line.
They'll be really
Killing
strong
King.
on that.
Because, I think that's the
because, like, for me, it's all about battle line units. So if they haven't got a battle line unit, then they can't control it. So it's
Dawn Riders in Luminef as well. They're really fast for those.
they're so fast.
Yeah. I think Places of Arcane Power, I don't know why. Look, I'm sure it's not, but they look like they're quite spread out for your heroes. Again, it looks like you'd maybe need, for me, I don't know whether it's just me looking at the map the way it is. Maybe
you're right. That is one of the more spread ones, for sure.
No different to how it used to be. The only difference is that you don't have, because you don't have the diagonal deployment, you lose the little corners where you used to be able to be 9 away from 12 away from the objective and just
exactly
within range to get to it. So it's a lot harder to run a normal foot hero.
Something
you're
with
not getting on those. Yeah, you're not getting on those objectives on those corner ones unless you've got a super fast hero until turn 2, I think.
Yeah, you also can't set up close to it behind a screen, so you're protected if you give your opponent the first turn and then you can get onto it. That's not a thing anymore. You're in this little block here, and it's here or here, and you're now behind a screen way, way, way back. So if you want to protect yourself and be within range of it, you're probably going to have to run and use a command point to make that a 6.
Yeah.
Which is a big difference.
Looking at it, it looks like you just, it's what we always did anyway. You'd go, right, I'm going to try and go to those two, or the right two, or the middle and the right, or the middle and the left. I think now, with the deployment, it sort of makes that even more important with how you deploy. You're going to have to decide what you're doing at that point, because you're not going to get onto those objectives, maybe.
Certain armies, I look at this and I get excited about the prospect of Beastclaw. Because they can make some strange things. They can make some strange things battle line and monster and behemoth, and they're fast and they're pretty resilient.
So you can. It's interesting because there's some missions you need leaders. I think leaders are more important now than they ever have been.
Yeah.
Because I think you've got the arcane power, which is, I believe, is leader. But you've also got other missions where leaders give you bonuses. So I quite like the fact that it's not, you have to be a leader to capture it. It just gives you a bonus. So
I think that's a really even-handed way.
So I think Scorched Earth and Total Conquest is leader as well. And then obviously you've got, so there's 3 missions there out of the 12 that need leaders, or give you a bonus if you've got leaders. One that's Behemoth. And I believe that, battle line for... I'm the only mission I don't like is Better Part of Valor, if I'm honest. If I give my own personal opinion. I just don't like it. Never liked it. But even worse now, in my opinion.
I think it's going to be interesting, because you said leaders are such a key thing now to the game with, scoring objectives. Is it going to be? I think you're going to need more than because most lists that I tend to write or I've seen, are we've got a monster, we've got 2 little support heroes. Do you think maybe, and then blocks of stuff? Do you think maybe you see a reduction in the size of the block and you slot another hero in, or do you think it's not?
Well, you might see people take in more magma drops over little guys who get Lookout Sir and stuff like that. Lookout Sir is still the same, I presume. By the way, I'm not.
Yeah, it's the core rule.
Core rules, so yeah.
Yeah, so even though you do have that protection on them, if they can't reach it, it doesn't matter. So maybe we'll see people shifting it. I did literally exactly that this morning whilst writing lists on the toilet. I wrote the same list that I played recently, and which was like 3 Wardocks, 3 Rogue Idols, 3 units of more boys. And then I looked at my hero selection and actually maybe I drop a Rogue Idol and it becomes a Troll Hag because she's resilient, she's faster than the other guys, and is a wizard as well. But mostly it was a consideration for the fact that I had weak heroes who weren't that quick.
Yeah, I think you're. I mean, I tend to. I think if you got 3 heroes, that's probably enough. You know, I think you might see more little ancillary heroes like rather than big ones, because you generally run big ones anyway. But I think some lists might be tempted to drop like maybe some infantry in favour of
10 guys,
like an 80-point support hero, or you know, like an extra wizard or something like that. I mean, Bloodbound always.
Altharian's looking more appealing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Altharian's looking a lot more appealing. It's quite fast. I think he's like 6 or 8.
Isn't he?
He's very hard to get rid of. He kills stuff for fun.
Is he harder to get rid of or build and enjoy?
He's 3 ignore rend. I found him quite enjoyable to build, but I let you and Terry build him first, and then just followed all the pitfalls. But yeah, for me, like I definitely like Atharian now. Like looking at the leader aspects, I'm like, can I slot him in? You know, just
fast people as well.
You know, I can't remember what his movement is off the top of my head, and I'm not going to get
probably at least 6. Yeah.
Fast.
I think fast heroes are going to be a thing, and like Russ was saying about dropping a unit of 10 guys in favour of this or that, or maybe you drop a unit of 10 guys, and instead of having this 80 or 100 point wizard, you take this 200 point thing that moves quicker and has a slightly better save. I don't know, like if it was a decision between like a wizard on foot or a wizard on disc who's twice as expensive but has a better save and flies, then maybe people start shifting that way.
Yeah.
So we
definitely interesting.
Should we have a look at some questions and then wrap up?
Yeah. Should we do a break first?
And we're back from the break. And we figured we asked some questions on Twitterverse this morning about what people wanted us to talk about. So
got a million responses.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, that's good. So I think we had a lot of questions around things like, you know, the approach to, you know, as a concept, the handbook and things like that, and also we're not going to go into that. That's not really for us to go into. A lot of questions about the Anvil of Apotheosis as well, which is that character creation bit that's outside the match play section, which can be match play legal if people agree. And I think it'll be a bit like malign portents and stuff like that. If people want to allow it, they'll run it, or they'll use it, or they'll run it at their event. But I don't think it'll be widely adopted.
Specific tournament or as a thing where they'll go, you can have one Anvil of Apotheosis hero up to this value if you want in like a fruity tournament pack that they want to run. So
I mean, I haven't read it, so I don't know what it's like, if it's balanced or not. I just haven't looked at it. So, but I imagine it will be down to, if people talk about tournament play, it'll be down to the tournament organizer. And I think in the book it says if your opponent agrees. So if you're playing at a club, if your opponent says, yeah, you crack on. But my experience is generally your opponent will always say no. Unless they're
because they turned up and didn't do that thing. So
unless they're like a narrative player and you've both agreed and you've got a cool reason. So I think it's a really cool thing, but it's not in the match play section, probably for a reason. So so I'd say
good answer.
And Carl, when you play me, you're never using it. Sorry.
Also, Breakspear, when you're playing me, you're never using it. So,
and not because I think it's any good, just because I want to upset you.
Yes.
And I can't learn new things, so that goes for the same for me as well.
Yeah, and Terry's not here, but Terry says the same thing, Carl.
yes. So no.
Yeah.
If you convert your model for each special thing that you do in the Anvil of Apotheosis, Carl, then you can use it. But I might change my mind on the day. But I might change my mind on the day, is what we're saying. So
when it comes to the combat phase, I'll change my mind.
Yeah, I'll be like, what's it do? No, you can't have it.
Oh, and if you win with that model, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid.
I'm just kidding. So do you want to read some of these out, and then we'll smash them?
Yeah, so the first one's from Dave Fraser, and he's not trolling, which is interesting, because Dave always trolls.
Yeah. Is his account interesting, Dave?
Yeah. It's like 90% troll, 10% just being an idiot. So Dave,
we do actually know Dave, disclaimer, it's not like we're being mean to him. We are.
I am being mean to Dave.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. So, do you foresee any of the changes made leading to scenarios being less important to the design of lists? By which I mean your list design becomes less about scenarios and more about just killing your opponent?
The
opposite.
Well, yeah, opposite. We've kind of covered that a little bit. I think maybe the fact that stuff's closer together, it could be reflected in terms of what he's saying. Like if you just kill your opponent and they are only 18 inches away instead of 24 if they're scoring, then maybe that's a thing, but I think largely no.
I mean, hopefully he means killing your opponent's army and not your opponent. Literally just like, well, they're dead, so they couldn't finish the game, so technically they couldn't save that. I mean, that's how it works. No.
Bring a hammer to the table. Ready.
You can't roll now, can you?
No. Perhaps we need to change our slogan from hammer to the face to something else so people don't get the wrong idea. I think more important because you want to have a more balanced list. You want behemoths, you want heroes, you want battle line that are going to be good in that one mission. Because if you go to an event and better part of Valor is used, then you need good fast battle line that can survive. So if you've gone min 3 units of dire walls, you're going to be like, well, that's basically a loss then, isn't it?
So everyone should buy 6 Stonehorns, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
but they're not. Yeah, but they're not really battle line, are they? Unless you've got the beast riders, and then they're not very good. Yeah. You can't give them artifacts, and they don't do.
You got 3 others that do have artifacts at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem is you're relying on your Mournfang, aren't you? Which is okay.
This is going to be Byron pointing everyone to Beast Claw, though, right? Because Byron loves Beast Claw at the moment. So every single thing that's like, it's like, oh, Beast Claw, oh, Beast Claw. So just
they are good.
Yeah.
That's not, that's... Next question, should we take that? I think we answered
Next question. So Carl Breakspear, we're not answering. Theo Jansen, he's asking about some point stuff, which we covered, we're not going to talk about. Laurie, what's your favourite new scenario, and which one you don't think you'll see at tournaments, ignoring Knife to the Heart?
I have to remind myself of their names.
I don't mind Knife to the Heart. I know it's a bit weird, but ever since I beat Luke Morton at it, I quite like it.
No.
I'm just going to go to the book now and go, that one. I
know what mine is, so I'll do mine now. So, I think Forcing the Hand is my new favourite. I think that is going to be really fun and interesting to play. I also think it brings that extra level of selecting your primary objective. Is going to add a different, nuanced part to the gameplay experience when you're at the table with your opponent. I think it's another level to just being able to walk across and kill your opponent.
I thought you were going to go off meta and go total commitment, Les, because we all know that's still...
No, mate, that's the biggest fear of my entire life. Being totally committed to anything is the biggest fear that I have.
I like the Blade's Edge. I think it's it's so different. I think it's super interesting. There's a lot of scenarios on the board, but they're going to start disappearing, and the way that they disappear is nothing like anything we've seen before. So, also that's the only one I've played, and I'm mildly informed about, so I picked that one.
Well, I'll go with Total Conquest because it's my sort of go-to favourite in the last 3 handbooks. I think the change on the leader scoring extra points, I think it's going to be interesting because you'll be able to mitigate picking up an objective and losing it, because if you pick it up with a leader,
picked up with the right
you
person,
get 2, they take it back off you. Without a leader, they get 2, but you've just lost the leader, so it's kind of interesting. But then if you take one off of them with big hero, like a big scary fighty hero, you've just scored 3. So I think it's going to really mess around with that mechanic, and things like big beaty heroes, Stonehorns, and that might become more useful for that mission. So I think it's an interesting take on that. I kind of wish it was left alone, but at the same time, like, the heroes got an extra point is going to make that mission more interesting. So
yeah, they're also very different from Battleline, right? If you're giving Battleline preference here and you're giving heroes preference there, like if you're choosing Battleline, you probably want to choose a big blob if it's going to stay there and have to take hits, and it just leaves with you juggling, like, do you spend 400 points here or 400 points there?
Both.
Going to be interesting when the Behemoth book drops, and like with how that sort of like changes things as well. Like, I imagine some of those models are going to be heroes. Like, so
yeah, I mean, interested to see. Obviously, like, we'll talk about that.
Cover that as and when
it's there.
That's going to be a fun one to review because it's only got 1 or 2 or 3 things in it, hasn't it?
Well, we won't comment on that just yet. So,
yes.
Next question.
Yeah. Next question. Theo Jansen, the Netherlands ETC guy. How do you think GW should handle armies falling way off the power level? And he gives an example with Gleam Spike Gits being, having counters with anti-magic, small character and stuff like that. He said there's been no meaningful points drops with them.
It's difficult because we're not there to strategize for GW's game, but I think it's hard to bring up a level in power by dropping points, because basically all you're doing is spamming the board with more rubbish models. We had that in old editions of Warhammer where, like, things like Tomb Kings and Bretonians got extra points, and armies like Demons of Darkness got less points, and actually you find that you still lost. It just took longer.
Even worse.
It's a very subjective opinion as well, because you have to base it really on data, and I won't go into analytics of Warhammer because I think it's fundamentally flawed, because there's not enough data to...
It's impossible,
and there's not enough clean... There's too many...
Not enough robots playing the game for us.
Yeah, exactly. That I think you can't... It's very difficult to say, but I think the problem you've got, especially with Gits, is you lower the points to stuff, you end up with 500 models on the table, and then the game becomes, you never finish a game and it's not fun. I mean, they have that issue now.
So, they've already got fundamentally a problem. They made them immune to battle shock, and it's still not enough. So those 90 guys that are there are dying half as fast as they would because they're within the aura of the thing, and they're still undercosted. What? So you're going to put 120 guys there that are still immune to battle line?
I think it's a very difficult balance to capture what an army does. Is it competitive in a meta that's always shifting, and is it fun? So I think that hopefully there'll be. I imagine that they're not trying to fix the world with points adjustments, because it's not possible, really. To be honest,
it's not the complete picture, is it?
No. I mean, it's like trying to fix everything in a car with a hammer. It ain't gonna work, is it? You can just end up with one beat up car.
I went for a meal and my burger was bad. Cool, we'll charge you less for it. My burger was still bad.
Yeah.
There's another side to it. I do think there are certain things where it's a nuanced answer, but if they need to be brought down, yes, but that doesn't always fix everything. So with Mournfang, for example, they haven't been taken widely. They still, even with some changes, feel difficult, and I think you'd still see more of them on the seeing 2 more of them on the table, or lists leaning more towards taking them instead of this. It's not like a spammy thing. People might just choose to take 2 units of 6 of them instead of Stonehorns. Well, but but yeah, I think there are definitely units that should be the recipients of a points drop, like things that work well fundamentally, do their thing, and maybe they are just a bit squishy, so them being a bit cheaper is a thing, and like no one's going to complain how long it takes to roll the attacks for 6 Mournfang instead of 5, for example. But generally speaking, I don't think it's as simple as just changing points.
No, it's good to be careful as well, because you might say, oh, no one takes this thing, and you reduce it, and then suddenly it's everywhere, and it's very hard then to put that back up, because people have gone out and built lists around it or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's
no one took.
I don't think there's a right answer, basically. So
no. Next one is Lalo the Tyrant. Thoughts on realms being a core part of the game setup. Would you like to see them rotate these every year to showcase the many theatres of warm for each realm? For example, if one year is in Ashki, the Hammerhall based, next year could be the Khorne based one, etc. What do you think about realms being part of like a rotating thing? So like it would be the next handbook. I assume what she's trying to say is the next handbook will be based around the Realm of Fire. Do you think then it should be Realm of Shadow, Realm of Death?
Well, I think maybe what she's maybe saying is that the each realm's rules maybe focus on an area of that realm. So,
okay,
like
yeah.
if you've got like the Brimstone Peninsula is the focus of Ashki, then next year it could be another area of Ashki. So I think it's quite a cool idea.
Yeah.
I think
that is a cool idea.
One of the interesting points, and picking up on that, is being a core part of the game setup. Some people played Realm rules as core setup from when they released. I know some places didn't adopt it widely. I'm not sure, depending on which environment you're playing in. I have no issue with realms. Like, the issue I had with the previous realms is some of the stuff had such a big impact on the game, and it was very. It could be a little bit like gotcha, and there was a lot of information to read because you had it in the core book, and you had it in malign sorcery, and you had the magic laws, and you had the artifacts. So it layered on top such a vast amount of extra information that wasn't apparently obvious unless you knew, oh, that's in the core book, that's in the malign sorcery book, that's in the handbook.
Yeah.
And what I quite like about what they've done with the match play element is they've put it in one place. So if you want to play narrative or whatever, you can still use malign sorcery. You can still use the malign sorcery spell laws. If you're a TO, to be honest, you could say we're going to use malign sorcery artifacts. There's nothing to stop you doing that. It's not like you're not forced to do anything. Like as a TO, you could run. It's your hobby. Do what you want. I think for me, what's good about it is that it is very simplistic, but it does have a nuance, and I quite like the idea of changing the focus within the realm. Maybe along this, I mean, I know that one of the abilities is about the Necroquake. Which is obviously quite strong in the lore with Bone Reapers and what's been going on with Forbidden Power and things like that. So obviously Nagash released the Necroquake. So I think inherently when they write the handbook and they write the realm, there might be a focus towards the story of how it's progressing anyway. But yeah, it's not a bad idea.
I like it. It doesn't change too much. If it stayed like it was and every year each of those realms got refreshed because it's in this area of it or this area of it, I think that's quite cool.
So there's a couple more that are covering off stuff that we sort of touched on at the start. We've got one from Bremin, who's the wonderful gent that ran the event in Belgium that I went to, and he's saying, General's Handbook tournament packs, yes or no, and what do you think of the secondaries?
We talked about that a lot. I think I'm a big fan of having generic packs for people who aren't experienced, who want to run an event. I think TOs would write their own packs anyway. I don't think it's like anything in this book. It's not dictating what you should do or what is right, what is wrong. It's just giving you a load of tools that you can use. So if you want to use that tool, you can use it. You don't have to. I think as well, it's quite nice that if the rules team are writing a pack, they're infinitely more, and they're going to be adopted at GW events, then I think that's a good thing because they're probably in a better place to write a rules pack than the events team, because they're thinking more about the wider rules and they know the game more detailed, and the events team can focus on the stuff around the event that's important to be.
It's a better starting point
rather than the rules, because the rules team have done the rules for them. So I think it's better to do that. I'm not sure if that's what's going to happen, but that's just I imagine they would adopt their own pack for their own events, but
you'd hope so.
Yeah. But like I say, like a TO, you could decide to use elements, not use it, do your own. So personally, I think there's nothing wrong with it. In terms of secondary missions, like it, I think it's good. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Skipping up a few, we've got one from Tom Lees, which is, how much does potential fun enjoyment come into your list building process? Do you put any stock into how boring a list may be if you're confident you can win with it? Now, before we get into this, I'll just say, if you go and ask your mate James Tinsdale, is it naming a character then make your list fun and enjoyable for your opponent? Because that's all he's been doing for the last
Or just making having a selfie with a knobhead make the game better.
So sorry, Russ, carry on. Do you think, do you factor in fun enjoyment with list building process, or does it matter if you think you'll win? Would you rather win than have your opponent have fun?
No, I would say that I want to write a competitive list that, one, I enjoy using with models I want to paint or play with, but also one that isn't tricked out or boring. So, I mean, it's no secret, like things like, for me, it's not, I'm a different place than I was probably 15 years ago. But the point is that I play an army, I want to enjoy the experience of the game, but I also want my opponent to enjoy the experience of the game. Now, for example, if I'm playing Bone Reapers, I'm not going to put 4 catapults in my list, because I don't want to paint 4 catapults. I don't want to play with 4 catapults, and I know my opponent ain't going to want to face 4 catapults unless they're playing something like Eels or Marathi and they don't care about it. I would never play... It's a shame that I might like an army, for example. I don't, but I might like, say if I like Fire Slayers and I wanted to be competitive, I might be forced to run that sort of list to be competitive, but I wouldn't. I would favour the Magma Droth or something like that, but then I probably wouldn't play Fire Slayers at tournaments because I would get frustrated with...
They don't lean towards your idea of... Yeah, they don't lean towards your idea of fun whilst being competitive, therefore they're not a consideration for you.
So, like, for me, even when I was running Slaanesh, I used a little bit sort of weird stuff that you don't see, and I was using, like, Pretenders with Celeste rather than... double keepers in Seek, those sort of things. But for
you did it with KO as well, didn't you? You stayed away from Claim Card and stuff like that, didn't you?
I didn't when I went to the event because it was the only viable list. But the list that I was working on was a Barrack Mornar frigate list. So it was more about multiple ships, but I just couldn't see it. The problem I had with Caradron is that I couldn't see a way to make it fun for my opponent because it was too focused on shooting. I'm talking about the old book here, not the current one.
Yeah.
So I just decided that I didn't enjoy playing with them, and a lot of that came from the experience my opponent had on the other side, and I've been on the receiving end of it myself. So it does factor into my decision, honestly, because I think as well, I like to try and set an example. I mean, it's a very subjective thing. It's so like part of that question: do you put any stock in how boring a list may be? Yeah, I do, because I don't care about winning and losing. I want to win when I go to a game. I play to win, sure, because I don't play to lose. But I don't want to win but with something that's so boring and like I wouldn't play like Change Host. Back in the original Zinch book, I actually had a Zinch army, and I was going to play Zinch, and then it went batshit, and I just put the whole army in a box and eventually sold it, and I never did it because I didn't want to play with it because it's boring, it's got a stigma, and I love the models. I love Zinch; it's one of my favourite Chaos Gods, but I wouldn't play it. So I can hand on heart say that it does come into my thought process quite heavily. What about you guys?
I think like having played some of the lists that would be earmarked as boring. Some things can be more fun than they would seem, and some things can be less fun than they would seem. So, a particular bugbear of mine is people taking multiple hordes. Like unless I'm confident that they're either going to disintegrate or obliterate someone fast, I don't like having more than one heavy duty block in terms of dice rolling in the list massively. And I played ETC. I did play a list that did a lot of dice rolling, and I'm aware how it was for me. I'm aware how it was for my opponents. Variety is interesting. Variety is fun. Running something that's different is fun. But also learning is fun. So that, like, selfishly, not about my opponent, but I want to go into a game and be able to be like, no, I've made a mistake there. I've got a bit better at using this. I now know how to use fast cav better. I had a behemoth, so I could do this, and maybe I'll apply that in the future. You don't get to do that if you turn up with a gimmick. So I got worse while I was playing the lists that weren't fun. And for me, a lot of fun is having an enjoyable experience. And a large part of that for me is learning and knowing that journey over destination, the next time I play, I've got a thing that I can apply. That's cool. Yeah. I'm always about like how I'm getting somewhere, not getting there. Now that might change at ETC, But that's the only exception for me. So learning is a really
theatre, though, isn't it? Like the ETC.
Yeah, it is. And if I played outside of tournaments, then I wouldn't have taken the list that I did take to tournaments. They are my practice. And having played a really fun list recently, the things that I think are fun, and maybe it's a subject for a future podcast, are like it's having too many things to try and remember is not fun. You've already heard me moaning about that. Obviously, I've got a low capacity as an individual anyway, but having too many units that you aren't completely 100% familiar with, that's not fun. Having too much maintenance of things, that's not fun. And also rolling too many things again and again for little result is not fun, and that goes for you and your opponent. Yeah. Well, I'll give you a candid result in that. The saving grace of the Bone Splitters list, I think, is that when anything touched it, it died. If a quarter of my opponent's army touched it, it died. And the games that ended up being super interesting were the ones where, I don't know, 30 Plague Monks and a Vermin Lord and 2 shooting units were left, and then they completely killed me, and I had to run to the right place and win by actually using my brain. Learning, that's why I liked it, and my opponents had more fun in those games as well. So yeah, it does come into consideration, but I think it ties in with more like what is fun also ties in with learning and like variety and the journey and stuff like that too.
I've been the same. I like, obviously I've been playing Fire Slayers a lot recently, most of last season, and obviously with the ETC. And like, if you know me, you know that is not the way I like to play Warhammer at all. So like, I took that army for the team event, and I was playing it because of the team. I took Hallowheart to Belgium, didn't enjoy it. The way I like to play Warhammer is fast, hard-hitting combat, and like, it's the opposite of what the lists that I've been playing lately. So for me, I try and factor in as much fun as I can, because like, it's quite a time intense hobby. We spend a lot of time painting, we spend a lot of time gaming. Why not factor in the fun element? And I've always found that one of the big reasons that people hated playing against the Fire Slayers, and why it was such an egregious thing for people to play against, was not that I was coming across the table and fighting, because everyone likes to fight. They don't feel so bad if they get to kill stuff in retaliation. It was the fact that whatever I touched, I killed, and whatever they threw at me died. So that was the thing that they didn't enjoy in the game. So yeah, I think you need to factor in what you get out of it enjoyment-wise, and understand that what your opponent's not going to enjoy when they play it. Like, it's how many times have, like, we played Russ, and you didn't. You said you didn't like the Fire Slayers, and Tinsdale said the same thing. Like, it's just a very horrible thing to do, and it's, Byron, for instance, like when we played at the final before I went home because I'd done my backing, it was like, I'm going to try and shoot off your heroes. If I don't shoot off all your heroes, then I win, because I just push what's left into your army and kill you.
Yeah.
But you shot off all the heroes, and then you managed to shoot off all of the unit, which was, it was like a flip of a coin almost on dice rolls.
Yeah, I think when you have more fun as an individual, you are more fun for your opponent as well. Like, that's the thing. Like, Les sitting down with Hallowheart, let's take that example. He knows it's a bullcrap army. That is going to come across to his opponent. Whereas if you bounce up to the table and you're like, I am super psyched to play these 2 Star Drakes and these 20 Judicators, and it's cool and cohesive, but it's not that good an idea, but I love it. Like, that is going to come across to your opponent. Also, if you're sticking with the same list, like Fire Slayers or whatever, if you were like, I love the idea of Fire Slayers, but I don't want to do that, I'm going to spend the next 6 months trying to make Fire Slayers work in an unconventional manner, that's when you grow real love for an army. Like, Russ has done this with most armies, but Death in particular. Like, there is such thing as a Russ TM list that involves 6 Spirit Hosts and Arcan and a load of other things that he really likes, and he's grown to love that by trying to make something that isn't a cookie cutter list work. Same with my order. Like, I thought that was crap before I started. It turned out to be really good, but I was fiercely passionate about making that army work because I was invested.
Same with me with Stormcast, right? I mean, the most enjoyable tournament that I can say from last year was Blood and Glory, when I took Skyborn Slayers to Stormcast.
Exactly.
Blood and Glory. And I felt like I could have won any of the games that I lost, and really, really enjoyed the process. But that's,
you probably learned a lot more as well, right? Like, you came out of that like full of ideas.
Yeah, it was. And I actually, like, which is quite nice actually, because it can lead on to the next sort of like segue with the next question we've got, which is skipping a few up with ideas wise. Donald's asking, like, who do you think the biggest winners and losers are from the Generals Handbook with the points change? And I personally think that Stormcast with their points changes are going to see a bit more on the table. I think that they're going to be, admittedly, like, you know, there's been, like, you lost some of the key battalions that I used to run, but I think that there's, you get a lot more in the Stormcast army now. So that's my biggest thing. I'd like to see a few more Stormcasts on the table.
I think for me, there's a lot of winners and losers. I mean, obviously, we're recording this before any sort of FAQ update PDF's gone out, and we're going to do another show once, you know, if it's released on that. But for me, probably one of the biggest changes that I can see is Nurgle. I think the scenarios lead themselves to Nurgle. They're a bit more central. There's a bit more emphasis on survivable battle line and heroes. You know, Thricefold Nurgle has that in abundance, fleshy abundance, I should say. So I think Nurgle are going to be a new... I see a little bit of a resurgence. I mean, they're a fun army anyway. They're good to play. They've got a lot of options, and particularly with some of the stuff that's come out in like the Slaves to Darkness book, and there's a couple. I think there's is it Wrath of the Everchosen? Is that the book? There's some
with the Chaos Ascendant and stuff like.
Yeah, so there's some extra stuff in there, some extra formations and things like that. So I think the kind of Nurgle will come back into it, and I think, you know, say Stormcast have had sort of big reductions, haven't they? And
so many stars in that section of the book.
Yeah, and,
I think it'll make a difference. I've been looking at them. I think, you know, because if I do end up playing a tournament and the Lumineth aren't ready, then it'll be my Stormcast that I'll be going to. So gonna have a nose. I do think there's definite changes there. What about you, Byron? What do you think so far?
So there's a few things. I'm jumping this. I've just seen a load of stars in Gloomspite. And I'm not massively familiar with their points beforehand, but I'm pretty sure that things have got slightly cheaper on not the fundamental you spam them core units, but on different options. Trolls have changed a little, stuff like that. I'd love to see, I love troll armies. I think they're amazing. I think they're really cool, and the fact that you get a few more bodies in there is a really, really good idea. I reckon I'm super down with that. Things haven't, I think a lot of sensible changes have been made that aren't going to change things massively, but should just rebalance them. So, for example, if someone was all about taking these characters because they were too much of a bargain, and I've not even looked at FEC yet, but this is the army that I'd use the example of. So I wish that I'd researched this before I started talking. If you look at FEC, for example, if they redistributed it, so the heroes were a bit more expensive, and then things like crypt horrors or ghouls or whatever that just disintegrate, actually putting them on the table at the start of the battle instead of taking these heroes and summoning them, if that would become more viable, that would be really cool. So that's the type of changes that I like to see. I've not seen anything that jumps out to me and like, Byron, you are taking this army now because this has changed, apart from the Troggers, which I've loved those models for forever, and spiders and all that stuff. So doing a proper beastie gribbly Moonclan list would be really cool.
And then I suppose going to the last kind of question, I think, because we've been on talking about these for a while now. Steve Follows has asked, are Beastclaw Raiders the new powerhouse with monster units that are also battle line, who can get up on VP's early game, stick around with 2 saves and the abilities to heal? What do you think?
I think they're a good army. They've been doing quite well at events, and I think the scenarios help them. Some of them not so much, some of them more. I think they've lost some of their power by not being able to take realm artifacts, because, you know, Thermal Rider Stonehorn was a lot better than a non-Thermal Rider Stonehorn. But yeah, I think they're decent. I mean, like, they're an army that I like and I've played, and I enjoy playing with them, so I think they can be competitive.
You've got like a Beast Claw Raider force still, haven't you? You haven't sold that one.
No, I took it to Tomlin's event just before lockdown as well. So.
I didn't go that one, did I? So it was.
I think it's quite good. So I mean, Beastclaw are solid. I'll say if you're excited about playing Beastclaw, Steve, do a Beastclaw army. It sounds like you want to. So.
Yeah. Also, when you're coming back to the UK.
Exactly. don't think he's ever coming back now. I'm shed my tear.
Oh no. Poor drink for Steve.
So I think, like, end of the day, like the in terms of like armies, what I like about the handbook is that these little adjustments, like I just looked at the Nighthaunt changes. There's lots of changes in Nighthaunt, so you might suddenly find new lists using formations or using like, you know, like Raikkonen becomes more, you know, you might say that Kurdos Valentine's more viable because he's cheaper. Then like people's command points are more precious, so he becomes more impactful. You might say that Lydia Linda's got cheaper. You might say that Hex Racer got cheaper, so I'm going to run a Hex Ray from Black Coach formation. So there's so many.
The Harridans, have they dropped? Because we never seen any Harridans on the table.
It's because they're awful.
Yeah.
But
I thought they had like loads of attacks, but they just
I hate the models, so I'll never.
It's like,
they look like a cross between a Termagant and a Banshee, and it doesn't really do
because I always thought that they seemed like they could be potentially good with just the sheer volume of attacks, but
the problem is for me,
I don't know
I
if
look
they...
at those and then I look at like the Bladegeist Revenants and I say cool looking like ethereal dudes with massive swords, or these Banshee women
weird
with, like,
Banshee thing,
talents, and I just go to the swords every time. But yeah, I mean they're okay. I don't know if they've changed. They probably have. I'll just check in now.
I wasn't sure, like, because I wasn't sure if you had the point set in front of you. Sorry.
I didn't have it in front of me, but it's I do have it in front of me now. So Harridans you're talking about, yeah, they've come down.
Yeah.
So
yes,
they're 70.
I don't know. I think that
for 5 rather than I think they were 80. They might have been 90 before that.
So not a great deal. I guess
Kurdos has come down. I think the Black Coach has come down a little bit. I think as well, like in Def, Manfred and Neferata have dropped as well.
Okay.
And Arcan.
Yeah, Neferata's dropped significantly.
Arcan is now more expensive than Manfred or Neferata. So, my boy. So yeah, it's
sometimes
it might be
good
interesting to try and write a Legion list that I think is good, but for me, if I was going to do a new army based on the new handbook, I would be leaning towards the Nurgle route, I think.
We can cover that when we do our lists, can't we?
Build, so
yeah, I'll do that in the next show. We'll write a list of the army that we want to play in the new handbook. So
yeah,
I want to make Rogue Idols work, but I'm not sure if I'm overly optimistic there. That's me trying to push fun over performance, possibly too hard. But I'll turn up with my fun and then get screwed.
That kind of thing is good. Like that's something I enjoy. Like I'll write a list centered around a concept. A bit like when I do a hobby project, I might focus it around a new medium or a new technique. Yeah. It's the same thing. The enjoyment I get from planning and executing something isn't so much about, it goes back to the other question, it's not about winning, it's about taking something I want to use or do and trying to make that effective, because that journey and that discovery and that learning and that application is more fun than going, what did so-and-so take to this event? Can I dip it in Bronze Seal? And can I chuck it on the table and win 3 out of 5 games because I'm not as good as that person, I've never played with it before? And did my opponent hate playing me because I put a Hallow Heart list and they wanted to put their fingers through their eyes to enjoy the game? So actually, I don't enjoy any of that process. I'm painting models I don't want to paint. I'm playing a list that I haven't come up with. My opponents aren't enjoying themselves, and I didn't win. So what was the point?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm going to try and make Rogue Idols work, or something on that theme. It seems they've been hit unnecessarily with a bat because no one was going and winning an event with 2 or more Rogue Idols. So points get very tight if you do want to take 3, and then you end up with 35 models on the table, 30 of which disintegrate. But I had the most fun trying to magic my magic phase, trying to prioritize who I charged into, who I fought with first, who I buffed, who I didn't buff, that type of thing. It felt like a really lovely list. So I'm not sure if I'll end up somewhere in the middle with like 2 Rogue Idols and a big block of 30 guys and some big stabbers or something like that. But I've got a lot of the models done already, and I've got a way to make that army happen quickly. So I would like to start something new, and that could be the starting point for it.
I am. I think I'm going to look at Stormcast just because I think like the drops in Paladins and stuff like that like excite me.
Yeah.
You know, I know they're not as like bang for buck as like evocators and stuff like that, but I do feel that that you may have the option to see more of them on the table. I think that's what I like to focus on. I mean, I can do like Lumineth lists, but like that's all quite not as relevant now. Like I think maybe do a couple of Stormcast lists because I know that book inside out like back to front. So
you could also go. I know it's not the way you played it before, but in cities there's some lists with Stormcast that are super interesting, and you could take like 3/4 3/4 of the points on the table could be Stormcast as well.
Yeah, for me, I've never really enjoyed that like element. I guess maybe you probably find a more competitive build in a cities book, using Stormcast and then using you know, your allies and stuff like that to create you know, screens or like objective scores. But I think for me, I'm always quite pure. Like I'd rather just do, if I'm going to do Stormcast, I'll do a Stormcast book army list in a book, because that's what like speaks to me, as opposed to I'm going to take a Living City Stormcast list with bits and pieces, you know, to counter the fact that I'm low model count. But I don't know. I'm going to look at it. Like we've got a bit of time to look at it, and I'll have a think and consider it and stuff. And Russ has already said here that he's going to make the next tournament-winning Legion of Nagash list, right?
Well, I can try and write. I don't think it'll be tournament winning, but I'd be interested. I think, like, I mean, a lot of it comes in what I'm excited about personally as well. So with Legion and Nagash, I've played a lot of it. So my head isn't in that space at the moment. So my head space is more in like Auric War Clan, Ironjaws, and Nurgle. So those are the two armies I'm thinking about. And you know, I've got a Bone Reaper army, and you know, maybe I'll go back to them and look at what happens to them if there's any changes in the update and stuff. But I don't know. Really, the thing is, again, I said on the last show, is I don't know when we're going to be gaming again, particularly me, because I don't have club, I don't play outside of events really. So if I'm not going to be gaming until January next year, then it's kind of a long way off, you know. So I can start to plan, and I think, what do I want to do? I've already got a Nurgle army, but I've got kits sitting around that I haven't painted, so I've got some more Rockbringer stuff that I haven't done. And I've only got one Great and Clean one, so maybe I think I'll do an extra couple Great and Clean ones. Maybe I'll paint the Pascal Blight Lords. You know, maybe I'll look at Blight Cyst or Affliction Cyst, something like that. You know, as a list basis. I've got the Foot Hero, which Lord of Blights that I haven't painted.
Yeah.
I've got a Gut Rot Spoon I haven't painted, which I really like the model. And I'm thinking
Snail them.
Yeah, I've got Horticulus is painted to a point, because I had to do it for when Nigel took him to Six Nations. He borrowed my Nurgle, so I did him up for that. But I think
you've got all those options for the warriors you can add in as well, haven't you? Like,
well,
that's what would excite me a bit. It's like the new warrior kits and like Chaos Knights in Nurgle theme. Like you could convert them. I mean, they're quite small, so I'm not sure how you could put a Blight Lord on top of it. But Blight King.
The Blight King Sprue's got so many weapons and heads and extras.
You could
it's chaos, isn't it? Yeah.
At the end of the day,
that's what I'd be doing.
There are hundreds of options with that book that I can look at, and with the adjustments on the points as well, it opens up a lot more lists, particularly around the formations, which then allow you to get double artifacts, and you start running like Witherstave and Rustfang together and stuff like that. So you can start to look at more viable options. So yeah, I mean, they're I think from the changes in the handbook, because they've been influenced, and maybe Nighthaunt as well, those two have been heavily impacted. The only difference for me is that I don't particularly enjoy playing with Nighthaunt, because it's a lot of models and a lot of dice rolls and a lot of leaning over the table and moving, and a lot of survivability for not a lot of effect. Whereas at least with Nurgle, you've got that explosive damage you can do with combos like you know, purification and things like that, and models are less models, so it's less models to move around and
less breaky as well.
They also don't fall over; they're not top heavy.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's swings and roundabouts, but I mean, I might have a look at a Legion list, but I don't. For me, like, I would come back to Legion later. I think this season I probably won't touch Legion. not because of I think they're really bad, but it's just because they're not where my head's at. So I'm I'm thinking more like exactly. It's cool, isn't it? So there's a
Blade Ghost Revenant
camera. I think for me, like I had a period when I was playing a lot of Legion, and so I could only play one army at an event, so I just have to decide where I'm going with that. And so in 6 months' time, my opinion might be completely changed, and I might be totally excited about something else. I mean, I could probably tell you it's not going to be Hallow Heart or Fire Slayers, but that's no spoiler there. So it's
you never know.
I started writing MSU Fire Slayers. I'm still trying to work out how to make it work.
I'd rather play an MSU Caradron. So that's.
I keep looking at the Caradron book. I really like that book, the Caradron book. I think that there's definitely something there. I just can't quite. I don't know if it's going to be tournament winning, but I think you could have a lot of fun with it.
Oh, the bubbles were the best thing. When I played my last event with the mixed cities list, my 2 units of 3 bubble men were the hardest thing to use right and had the most potential in my entire army. And they felt like you would love trying to make them work, basically.
Yeah, I think the KO, they're a book that I think if you took a lot of time with and nuanced, you could probably do quite well with them, but they're going to take a lot of effort. And I don't think many people want that. They want the quick fix, the quick win. Tell me how to play it. Tell me what wins. You tell me what the best list is, and I'll build it and paint it, and then realise that I haven't grown as a player or enjoyed the process because it's not my process, and I'm emulating. I find it a lot more fun to find your own path than it is to follow somebody else's.
It's like I lost loads of games with Hallow Heart, right? Because it just doesn't suit my style of gaming at all. Like it isn't inherent to how I play the game of Warhammer. And so that like you've given me a tournament winning list and I've lost games with it that somebody like Tom would have won because he would have made the right decisions. I think there's a lot to be said with taking something you love and then playing it a lot until you get
gotta be lucky
good with it.
Like he at Blood and Glory, if he had a different matchup, if he got drawn against a different army, he would have lost.
Well, if he got drawn against my Skyborn Slayers, I think at that point, because I drop him, I think you go in. I think I may have beat him.
I think an eel list would beat him, and he just avoided the eel list. And then my list is like a gift wrapped. Although I was playing like a corn list, which all my effective ranges is less than his gun range. So basically, I'm screwed anyway. Spells or no spells, so it's one of the most boring game of Warhammer I've played, and I've played against Fire Slayers twice, so it's no more than twice, but that particular list. I mean, even like when I was at the ETC and playing combat Slanesh against a Fire Slayer army I can't fight, it's like, well, that's not fun for anyone, and I'm not saying that having a Slanesh army delete you in a turn is fun, but at least
you were both not having fun together.
But but I think when you like when I play like Gristlegore versus Slanesh or Khorne versus Slanesh, it's quite an interesting game because you've both got that kind of explosivity and damage, and it's all combat based, and there's a lot of nuances around the pile-ins and the distancing, and it becomes a lot more interesting. So naturally, on its own, those lists could be quite polar. And I think that's the thing when you write an army list. If you specialize it so heavily, you will have that experience either one way or the other. So either you will, but my issue is that if I can't write a balanced list that can deal with an army, I don't even through good play or not favorable scenario or luck, then I have a fundamental issue with that list because I think it's not. I mean, an eel list fundamentally is a very specialized polarized list. But I've never gone to a table with my army and thinking I'm not going to be able to compete against it. It might be difficult, it might be harder than usual than another army, but when I've played against Fire Slayers and sometimes with a mission, you think I literally cannot win this game. And for me, that's you might as well not play Warhammer, you might as well just play top trumps, and I think that's the problem. And those sort of things hopefully get addressed with FAQs and handbooks and things like that. So that's why I like the handbook generally, because I think that's why you're going to those things out. So
I think that's why you're going to end up playing OBR again this year, because there's about 70 viable, like balanced varied lists in there that can deal with pretty much anything else in the game. It's a ridiculous book for that. I don't think anything is
great. I mean, they are
I don't
fantastic
think anything
army,
over or underpointed grossly. They're awesome.
No, they are great. I think that I don't know if I'll play again this year because I don't think I'll be at an event this year, but I might play the odd game around my house with somebody. But I'm leaning away from OBR anyway, just because that's not my focus at the moment. You know, I'm not thinking about them. So
cabbages.
Yeah, I do like. I always want to do a Maw Crusher build, so I did have a double Maw Crusher list I was toying with, but then I dropped that Maw Crusher for a Rogue Idol, so I've got an Idol and a Maw Crusher in my list. So that's there you go. But anyway, I think that probably wraps up this edition of General's Habit. Now, people probably be a bit disappointed we've not gone through all the points in detail, but you know, you've got the book, you can look at them yourselves. But I think next show what we'll do is we'll write a list based in the new environment of the scenarios and the points that we would want to play for this season in a faction and why we've done it. And then we'll talk through a bit like we did on the Luminef show when we talked about the Great Nations and which ones we want to play and how that goes. So hopefully that'll be an interesting journey. I'm probably, spoiler, going to do a Nurgle list, but I don't know yet. Might change that.
See what Terry does as well. Like if Terry's going to do a Nurgle list, like maybe do something. Maybe we'll pick something different. If you and Terry both do a Nurgle list, it'll be because I imagine Terry will just do a variation of his Thrice fold, won't he?
Yeah, whereas I would be doing a focused army. So
yeah, so maybe I think I'll look at Stormcast. I think that'll be. I think I'll have a refined Luminef list and I'll have a Stormcast one. I think that there's a lot that you can do with that book, the Stormcast book with the points changes name. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's right. And
I can't make my mind up at all, so I'll do something.
Yeah, well, you don't have to commit now, so we'll have some lists. I might do 2. I might do 2 anyway. So, yeah. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube or listening, if you're rather the traditional method of Facehammer content digestion, and
feel get in touch with us on Twitter and tell us what you like or what you don't like about the new format and stuff like that as well.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please comment below. We'll read all of them. Let us know what you think, what you'd like us to cover, what you're doing currently. If you think we missed anything, if you like the format, if you don't like the format, we'll read all of it and take it on board.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. See ya.
Bye-bye.